I could put it on a resume and get it out there. And given with how chaotic it's been here in the U.S. This past year, it's these two internships with the museums have been. I've been working on them for the last couple months, and I finally got started last week.
All right.
So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, it sounds like a absolutely good deal. What was the name of the museum?
So one is called the Sophienberg Museum.
Sophienberg, yeah.
It's a small museum that's kind of focuses on the German immigrant population in Texas that
Interesting,
immigrated
yeah.
in the
Mm-hmm.
They immigrated in the mid 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is the Witt Museum, which is more of a natural history museum. So you got caveman stuff on one hand, dinosaurs on the other, and a whole bunch of geography. And that's really more an area that I'm not so familiar with. So I'm expanding my experience through their departments over there. They had they had a really intricate safety and consideration class,
Okay.
and it was all about coronavirus and everything like that, how to approach people and so on and so forth. But I'm really excited to get started in there too. I'm predicting, December, January timeframe. I'll have enough experience and enough under my belt, enough projects under my belt that I'll be starting to shell out my my resume here and there and actually land a job again.
Yeah, I hope so. You have a lot of experience, and I mean, you're talking about a second degree. That's a lot of both practical experience, but also education. So yeah.
Yeah. Plans in that regard. I'm on the fence about it, but I'm finishing my global affairs degree this semester.
Yeah.
And I'm on the fence about going back to my history degree, which I finished that before joining the Marine Corps, which is it's another story. But I'm thinking about going back there and finish and advancing it into my master's. But
okay.
We'll see when time comes.
Yeah.
What comes first?
But let's come back to your what you're doing at the museum and all of those things. I wanted to ask you about the Marines and how you decided, or why you maybe possibly better, you decided to join the military in the first place. Why it became the Marines, and yeah.
So I was enamored growing up by tanks and aircraft, but I think I grew up with a steady diet of watching Terminator, Aliens, and Demolition Man, and I don't know, like that kind of stuff stuck to me, and Top Gun, and going through high school, experiencing 9/11 through junior high, it started forming what I wanted to do with myself and what I wanted to do as my life. Yeah. So up until graduating year in high school, I wanted to be an airborne infantryman, jumping out of planes, doing all that stuff.
Hell yeah!
But then, my cousin, the only other person in my generation's family, who he's the only other person who enlisted. He enlisted into the Marine Corps. And then it just kind of sparked my interest. Like, what is the Marine Corps about? So maybe I didn't know it at the time, but I started researching it. I started looking into it, and I was just like enamored. Full Metal Jacket was my thing.
Oh yeah.
Jarhead, it was the whole earning the Eagle Globe and Anchor was like.
Oh yeah.
It became essential to me. So. My senior year in high school, I was going to be enlisting out of that, and I had an accident. So my buddies who also enlisted after me, we would go dirt bike riding in the border region. Well, I was from South Texas at the time, and right along the border, there's plenty of parks and everything that was the border patrol was there, sometimes smugglers, but we would avoid that,
Oh.
and we would just go dirt bike riding in this area.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I had an accident that earned me the name Evil Knievel.
Okay.
I tore my ACL like 4 months from graduation, and I was kind of down, and like I needed surgery and therapy, and that I was down for at least like 8 months or so.
But
So-
wait, Evil Knievel, wasn't he like a famous trickster, trick rider, or something like that?
Yeah,
Suiting name then, yeah?
Yeah, he made his name from jumping over things with his motorbike. Well, I had a dirt bike, but there was also a little dirt ramp that I tried to jump, and when I jumped it, I don't know, I had such a weird angle. All I remember is seeing a bunch of sky
Mhm.
and landing and just feeling like my whole leg got ripped in half.
Oh shit.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it was I learned about pain.
Mhm. But so, rotating back to military itself, how was the interaction with the recruiter when you once actually started to talk about, or deciding that you wanted to go to the Marines?
So I approached him while I was in high school, to my dad's disapproval, but I just wanted to get information about it, like what can I do in the Marines, what can entail. Initially, I didn't really want to do combat arms, and
Yeah.
I had the mindset of what can I do in here that can benefit me in the long run. I had that in mind, so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wanted to do logistics. I wanted to do intelligence, something in that nature. And then that recruiter who was there, he was just getting started. He gave me what he knew. He thought I was one of his sure choices,
Mm-hmm.
like that I was gonna make the choice or make the thing go. And well, what happened was my knee happened, and then I
Yeah.
had to have the surgery and the therapy.
Mm.
So I kept him in touch with that, and we kind of lost contact because I kind of wasn't able to go anywhere because my knee was so busted.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, after all that, and I was finishing my degree in history, I tried to go the officer route. So I would contact the officer candidate recruiters.
Oh, yeah. Because you had a degree at this point.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I thought to myself, might as well shoot that extra level while I'm here. But what turned out was they had dried out all of the contracts. So there was, the last contract I tried to do for OCS was a ground contract, and there was like 25 of us applying for this one ground contract, and the guy who ended up getting it was a E5 infantry grunt. I think he had a bronze star with a V device.
Oh yeah.
He was a guy who'd been there, done that, and more power to him. I hope he did great, but I wasn't gonna be able to compete with that. So it occurred to me, like, hey, I mean, if contracts are dried up, I'm still young and able, and I'm so fucking tired of school.
Yeah.
I decided to re-enlist again, or I decided to enlist. And I got back in touch with that recruiter, who was now a senior recruiter. And I told him the situation. He's like, "I got you." So within like a month of us going back and forth, he secured me a contract. I said I wanted combat arms. He said, "We ain't got nothing for infantry, but we got plenty of room for everything else." I was like, "Sounds good to me." And the thing about the way the Marine Corps works is you have the infantry, combat support, which is tanks, AAVs, artillery, that whole area, and then you have all the other super pogue stuff. And so I signed up for the combat support, and they choose from there where you go. You have no say in that matter.
I think you said something very interesting there. That is kind of a military lingo thing that a lot of people don't think, or they don't know about it. A pogue. What is that?
Personnel other than grunts.
Okay.
So I'm technically a pogue, and I'm fine with that because ride or die. I like to live on my tank, and why walk around with work on your shoulders when you could ride on work?
There we go.
Yeah. So it's just banter back and forth. But tankers and infantry, we don't get along, but we will, and we get better along than we do thinking about like the guys who do admin or the guys who do supply and stuff like that.
I mean, you're still in the field. That's the thing. I mean, I can relate to this somewhat. I mean, when I started in Marines here, all Marine infantry here in Sweden are light infantry. So at first, you're kind of like, the training is hard, you know, you're tough, you're carrying these heavy packs and everything. But then the more experience you get, you realize that on the actual battlefield, the efficiency of light infantry is so limited. And you need to have those vehicles and those other support arms to actually be effective. So you just realize that you have to be at least mechanized in order to actually have an impact.
Absolutely, and I hark on this with my infantry buddies all the time, because to them I'm still the tanker.
Yeah.
And the whole combined arms integration has been a thing for several decades at this point. But that's a rabbit hole we can discuss some other time.
Oh yeah.
Where was I? So I had no idea I was going to be a tanker, but I had my shipping date where I was going to go to boot camp, when, and you know, the whole party was going to go from there. My enlistment started April 23rd, and that's when I went to go step on the yellow footprints. That was when I went to San Diego Recruit Depot,
which I've been to. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that. No,
I have been there. Yeah.
What'd you think of the place?
Ooh, wow. I mean, I'm coming from a place where we have 1 battalion left of the Marines. So used to be 5 regiments, and now it's down to 1 battalion. But now they're actually making it into 2 regiments now, so they are increasing it, which is very good. But just coming there and seeing how many people working there, and they're like, you know, this is the small base. The big base is over there, Camp Pendleton, Oceanside. Go there to see all the stuff, and it's just mind blowing how big it is.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I hadn't seen anything like that before, like, you know, in any branch whatsoever. I mean, I came from South Texas growing up, and it was a very small community. There was very little diversity. The largest minority of people were Anglos from like North Texas and stuff.
Okay, yeah.
And you know, no one's ever there. As I recall, it was a very like isolated, like very small community. And my first experience with like other people outside of that was actually going through the medical processing to go to the Marine Corps.
Okay.
So my first I guess like breaking out of like of my town was through the military. And I'm honestly really grateful about it, and the experiences I've had since then. But you know, at the time, you know, we had Black Friday, which was the there's when you show up to San Diego, you have an in-processing set of like 2 or 3 days, I think it was, where they do your medical shots. They make sure all your paperwork's in order. You know, they get you fitted for all your, not all your uniforms, but the uniforms you need initially. And then they time it in such a time that Friday is your first day of boot camp, and they do the whole. You get introduced to your drill instructors and stuff. And oh my God, that Black Friday was intense.
We've seen the movies. That's the closest reference that most of us have.
Yeah, and and you know, everyone says this. The movies only go so far, but I still remember the attitude I had at the time, and it was one of like I've been thinking about this day for like a year up to that point, and I was trying to mentally prepare for this stuff for what's to come and everything, and I made my peace a while ago about it, that I had to be 100%. There had to be no distractions, and I made it as that. So what happened then, I was 100% focused there then and now, and to be the best I could be, to not fuck anyone over, and to just like be the best I could be to earn this stuff.
Yep.
So yeah, phase 1, yeah, it's a whole lot of screaming, a whole lot of dressing down, sleepless nights, and I was one of the older guys in our platoon.
How old were you when you entered?
I think it was 20. No, I just turned 23, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah. and it was actually interesting. My whole platoon was very diverse. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, diverse. There's actually a few who were not Americans who joined up, and it was. I remember one. He was a West African, and his accent was very thick.
Okay.
And I mean, he was a hard charger guy and everything. But it's interesting because our whole platoon. So there was maybe we're talking about a platoon of maybe 40 guys, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Our whole platoon was admin and logistics or going to the air wing. Like
Okay.
that was everything. And there
Mm-hmm.
was probably about 5 of us that were going combat arms.
All right.
We had one infantryman with us, and he was, oh man, he looked like Captain America.
Mm.
Solid 200 pounds of just like cornbread American muscle dude.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, he's a good guy. But everyone else was some form of logistics or supply or air wing, to include that West African. And I bring it up because I remember one time when we had like through first phase, through third phase, we had like a heart-to-heart moment,
Mm-hmm.
and he was telling me how he had the idea of joining the U.S. Marines would give him the training and the experience to go back to I think it was Liberia. I'm not sure, somewhere in Western Africa,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so he could go back and fight like back in his home country. And I was like,
Okay.
damn, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So then, why did he become an admin clerk? I don't know, but I don't know.
It gives something, I guess. I'm actually going to show a clip to the viewers now to see the what the intro to the Marine Corps looks like, just as a short clip here.
Okay.
There we go. And this goes on for like 3 months, I think. That's very, very, very... 3 months of this. Yeah, I don't know. It looks extremely, extremely stressful, actually.
Yeah, that's their whole philosophy, or it's been their philosophy the whole time.
To prepare you for chaos, to prepare you for the chaos of combat, and to continue on with the mission despite everything's chaos around you.
Exactly.
Yep.
The chaos of it. You know, because of the day and age we live in, we can't exactly start shooting each other to really simulate that. So they do what they can in the most efficient manner.
Yep.
That includes loss of sleep, the screaming, the physical exertion, the exhaustion, the sore muscles, all that put together, and to make it as hard as possible.
Yeah.
So that in the eventuality you come to that point where everything is like chaotic, you're still able to keep your mind, you're still able to keep focus. And while that's intended for time in the Marine Corps and what the Marine Corps' mission is, it's in my mind something that just kind of translates through like after your service life and everything like that. That's one thing I began to really appreciate. Where your mind goes, the body will follow. So if you train yourself and you keep yourself mentally sharp about it, the body will follow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna show the first picture of you here now, which is when I think it is during the when your family come and visit you after graduation, right?
Yeah, that was I think that was our modified Chucks with my white Garrison cover.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So how was the emotions there?
There are a few things, and I'm pretty sure you're familiar with it, that were just as like accomplishing. Like I felt like anything that anyone could tell me at that point, it didn't matter, because I got mine. I got it through my own sweat and blood and tears and everything else. That ceremony was great and all, and it was just kind of for the crowds and everything. But my moment came during phase 2, at the end of phase 2, when we go through our Hell Week.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how familiar the crowd is with with Hell Week, but it's an assortment of events over the course of, I want to say it's 5 days, 5 or 7 days, but you get a total of something like 4 hours of sleep in the whole endeavor, and it's a series of challenges. So it's like you're going to do a squad rush under fire. You got to crawl through barbed wire, stuff that just keeps you going, and you got to stay focused and everything. And at the end of every event, they would have us stand to for a Medal of Honor citation that a Marine had at some point in our history. Yeah. And
I remember being at the training center there in San Diego and walking. I think they had a museum where you could see about what different Marines had done in different battles and everything in order to connect to the history of the Marine Corps, I guess.
Yeah. The moment that got me the most, that made me finally realize I made it, was we had climbed the Reaper, which is the culmination of Hell Week. We climbed the Reaper. And the way they timed it beautifully, and they really know how to get into your mind to really boost your ego about it, for lack of a better, or your self-esteem. Is when we got to the Reaper, it's the end of Hell Week. Everyone's exhausted, but we know what's coming up, and we see the Reaper, and it's still before sunrise. Everyone maybe got about an hour's sleep before it, and we just see we ruck maybe, I want to say 6 miles to it, and we see the safety vehicle in front of us with their tail lights. And we see the tail lights, and we only see the tail lights just go off in the distance, and when we still can see them, and we just see the tail lights start going up and up and up, and like it's curling around us. So like, holy shit, we are in a mountain valley right now. So everyone started getting hyped up. They're like, this is it. And we started like chugging whatever sugar and coffee grinds we could, just like pouring them in our mouths, and then they're like, okay, it's time to go. So we started crawling up the Reaper, and once we got to the top, sunrise had just come up, and we read out loud the Medal of Honor citation for Colonel Red Mike Edison, and once we had that, we had a very small ceremony up top where our instructors had all shook our hands and everything like that. Everyone was cold, tired, and oh man, it had been like such a struggle just to get to that point, and no one was thinking about the fact that we still had a 5-mile ruck march back to the
now you got the motivation to do it. Yeah.
Well, when we get back, everyone's all like dirty and tired and bruised up and bleeding, and that's when they gave us our hemoglobin anchors, and it was just a handshake, and they pressed it into our hands, and that was it. Like, we earned it there. That was it. It wasn't really so much a ceremony as it was just a small like community of Marines now. We're all Marines now, and we earned it. So yeah, that was what it was for me.
But it is a very special moment. The first time you're in that title, and you get to get the globe in your case, and like a patch with the with Thor, the god Thor, on it for me. Nice. I mean, it is a very special feeling, and just going up there, and for me personally, it's shaking the hand of the colonel, and then swearing the Marine oath, like we call it, which is kind of like it's like a secret oath that you're not supposed to spread it around, but that you swear in an oath to Thor and to Odin and everything in order to always do your best and everything. I can't say that much about it, but yeah, it's a small club of people. Funny story, actually, I was walking around with my girlfriend yesterday, shopping at a place that other side of town. And I see a guy walking into the store. He's just been at a local gym, I guess. And he had he had a backpack on with the emblem of the Marines, and I have to. Yeah, and it's like it's a very small club here, so it's kind of like I just walked up to him immediately, and he's like, you start talking, you bound instantly, and he's like, oh, where were you? Which company? What did you do? Everything, and you start, because it's such a small organization, and you start name dropping people left, right, and center, and you know of all of them. You're like, oh yeah, I know him. Yeah, is he still doing this and this? Can he still do this? He's been trying to be able to squat 200 kilos for fucking 5 years. Has he able to do it yet? No. He's still chasing it. Like, oh, god damn it. It's just fun. It's a small club, and it's at this day and age, it's not a lot of people who go the military way. So then when you actually do meet someone who does that, it's just you have so much in common, even though you never met each other.
Absolutely. In the Marine Corps especially, it's well, from my experience, it's more of a test of which base you came from. And I was stationed at Camp Lejeune, and everyone knows about everyone who was at Lejeune knows about Lejeune and how shitty but how awesome awesome. Well, yeah, the club is real, and it's a different kind of scale thing, and it's subject to your battalion or your duty station and so on and so forth. But it's a real thing, and even in the National Guard, where not just the Guard but the Army in general, where you're more of a number than you are anything else. It's really nice to run into other Marines, and we have laughs and shit like that. So
I think we're coming up on our first little break.
Okay.
And when we come back, I guess we're gonna talk about tanks. That might interest a few people. So I'll be back. We'll be back in a little bit, everyone, and we'll learn more about tanks then.
All right.
I'll
be right back too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Hello again.
Hello again. Let's get you up on the screen, or us back on the screen. That's not the right screen. That's it. There we go. All right. So, basic training, or boot camp, like you call it, earning the title, and then after you're done there, tanks. Tanker school, huh?
Just about though. After boot camp, we had to go through our month long. It was about a month long. It was our Marine combat training. So it's supposed to be infantry school for people who aren't going to be infantrymen, and it was over at Pendleton. And I'm only bringing it up because
Okay.
you know one of my instructors over there was a tanker, and
all right.
yeah, so so he found out that me and one other guy were going to be tankers, and he basically made us carry the receiver and barrel and alternate carrying those two, or we'd alternate carrying it for our ruck marches because
All right.
Tankers need to be tough.
Oh yeah.
And so you know, we would go up the hills of Pendleton with a receiver on our pack already, with our weapon in our pack, and we learn real quick. If anyone asks, don't make it any don't make it obvious what your MOS is, because they can make it harder for you.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, so we did that, and then we went to tank school over in, well, we thought it was going to be in Fort Knox, but it turns out while I was at boot camp, they moved the school from Knox to Fort Benning, which is, it's supposed to, at the time Fort Benning was becoming, it is now, but it was becoming the big training center for all Army, Marine Corps kind of thing, or at least that was their vision.
Mm-hmm.
So the schoolhouse was in Benning, and I got my orders for there, and I think I had it was like 2 weeks where I was waiting for the training cycle to pick back up. So for 2 weeks I was waiting in cycle so I can start with the training rotation for tanks. And I bring this up because in those 2 weeks I did, I stayed out of trouble, but I was really just doing janitorial stuff around the barracks, cleaning that up, getting voluntold to do things, all that stuff. And the coolest thing about it though was one of those weekends I got voluntold to go to the Armored and Cavalry Heritage Site, which was it's a glorified name for a garage in Fort Benning where they have tanks from every era, and I mean every era, from almost every country, everything from Panthers, Tigers, even T-72s, T-62s. They had Pattons, they had Abram 1s, they had King Tigers, and I was absolutely hooked at that point.
Yeah.
I was my motor boner was going so hard.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, the history side of me was just like, yes. The Marine in me, the tanker in me was like, yes. And I never had to be voluntold to go to that place again, even just to bust rust. Even just to bust rust there. I was just so excited to be around that place. Which is, I go back to that place after my my enlistment and stuff, but we'll get to that bridge when we get there.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, tank school was, I think it was a 3-month course. We finished around December, I want to say. And in that time, we had our Marine Corps ball. We had tank training and familiarization in all aspects, from approaching the tank, getting on it, turning it on, turning it off, how to be a loader, how to get familiar with being a gunner. We didn't really touch being a TC because the way the Marine Corps tanker community worked was usually you spent an enlistment going through driver, loader, and gunner.
Okay.
And by the next time around, you got such experience in all those things. Well, you're going to be a tank commander now because you've got the experience in all those positions. So now you can start. Now you can start commanding.
Yeah.
We learned how to drive the tank. We learned how to move in formation. We got to fire the tank. It was I mean, I was already hook, line, and sinker in like when I got told I was going to be in tanks, but having actually done it now, having get to shoot the 240 and the coax, having get to shoot the main gun and load the main gun and just do all the things with it. I was, man,
Do you remember the first time you fired a gun?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's one thing like to be outside and to like hear the main gun go off because it just sounds like, this. I use the metaphor like you brought up Thor earlier.
Yeah.
Every time I hear the main gun go off, I just imagine in my head it's Thor just bringing down Mjolnir on something.
There we go.
Just, wow. And
it's kind of hard in video games. I've been talking about this for a long time. It's kind of hard to replicate this in video games. A lot of people say, "Oh, this sound is not realistic and everything." But then, I've heard people complain about how it sounds from like when you're shooting from the gunner's position, kind of like through the sights. And I kind of try to explain to them that it's just a huge shock force on you. It's not really a sound per se. It's just an immense pressure. I mean, of course there is sound, but it's not as present as that shock wave.
Absolutely, yeah. It's that sound is. So a lot of things about the tank that you learn from being around tanks is that noise is directional. All right. So if you're behind the main gun, you're going to hear a different thing than you are on the side of the main gun or in front of it. So what I'm getting at is the barrel is, you inside the tank, you're loaded up, ready to go, and you fire. You inside the tank already have your helmet on. You're hearing the engine and the hydraulics going off. That's a constant whine inside your head. Also, the physical tank itself it's closed off. So what you hear in the end ultimately is a big crump, like a big thump.
Yep.
And but you feel the pressure. You feel the tank vibrate so like slightly like it's recoiling. And it's just amazing, honestly. First time firing that main gun, and seeing the
pressure wave or from the gun,
the breach from inside. To see the breach inside, because the breach inside the turret is the big gorilla in the room. You always have to like angle yourself around it, and to see that thing as big as it was move back as fast as it did, it was oh my gosh, the power behind that was incredible. But so I remember my first time shooting it, and I was in the gunner's hole. I got the command to fire. On the way, fired, and I just remember feeling the rock and just feeling dust from outside start filtering in because we had our turrets or our hatches open.
The hatches open, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like holy crap. and then we got to shoot the coax and everything like that, and the 50 cal as well, and it's just a beautiful sound. The 50 cal and the 240 going off at once, just that rip of the 240, but also the thudding of the 50 cal.
And then, having come through the basic training where you fire a 5.56 rifle, just like we do in our basic, and then having to, getting to fire something just like the 240, which is a medium machine gun, the difference between those two is big. But then when you go to 50 cal, that's a big leap from a medium machine gun. And you kind of realize that, just my 5.56 rifle is lethal. What the hell is this thing then?
If the 5.56 is lethal, then the 240, the 50 cal, and the main gun is like it's like nuclear bombs in comparison. It just rains destruction. That's I'm gonna quote my friend here because he was a fister at one point, and when he got to call down heavy artillery for a training scenario, he said to me, that was the closest feeling I had to feeling like a god. And I think about that phrase, and I think about that as a gunner or being on a tank. That's the sensation it felt. It was so empowering and not just protecting, but also you can affect so much. And
I think you need to explain what a fister is, though. It sounds very. I think you need to explain what a fist does, so that people explain
fister. Fister. I'm trying to remember the exact phrase, but essentially, it's a forward observer, basically. And a fister is a guy who he's attached to the infantry. He's probably an infantryman himself. He just had the training. And whenever his patrol goes out and they have a target and they have the authorization to call on things, he's the subject matter expert when it comes to calling in artillery. So,
which was my job.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
What I did. So we actually trained with not just American Fister, which, like you said, serve inside an infantry company or usually attached to an individual platoon. But we also trained with the Marine Corps' Anglico, which is like Air Naval Gun Liaison Company. And we call in naval gunfire, mortars, artillery, like not cruise missiles but missiles, and then also what are they called, like hellfires, stuff like that.
Laser guided and whatnot.
Exactly.
Awesome. So
but you were on the M1A1, right?
That is correct. The M1A1, the old Rust. What's the term? Because amongst the tanker community, there is dumbass tankers, there's dinosaur ass tankers, which is kind of the same thing. But if you're like in the old M60, like those old tanks, you're a dinosaur. All right, I'm almost a dinosaur because the M1A1 was like that's the first Gulf War era of tanks, or the era of Abrams. So
I mean, the Army moved away from the A1 when?
Oh gosh, I want to say it was early 2000s, if not late 1990s. Then they got into the A2 model, and it wasn't until I think it was Iraq when they started implementing the all those armor packages and upgrades. So you had the A3 and gosh, it's a bit dizzying to me, so I'm having to learn about it myself.
Like Tusk, SEP, those ones, yeah.
SEP 1, SEP 2, SEP 3. I think they're working on a SEP 4. It's a whole collection of like minor upgrades, and it's really interesting because it brings up the whole debate, like how much longer does it have when they have to start thinking about a new platform. But then that gets into a whole discussion of budgets, necessity, and the works of things. So that just opens up the floor on that. But anyway, so after tank school, I graduate, get the certificate. The next day, I'm flown over to Camp Lejeune to report in at 2nd Tank Battalion, 2nd Marine Division, and we go through Camp Lejeune, and I report in, and my career now has begun in earnest. And tanking in the Marine Corps it's an interesting thing, but it can be summed up in terms of maintenance. So
there we go.
The thing about tanking, the wonderful thing about tanking is when you're in a tank, the job is simple. Each man has his position, each man has his job, and it's very simple because it's a matter of fighting, moving, and communicating, which is kind of like a basic tenet of any kind of combat arms. So for tanks, it's imagine being a single infantryman trying to do all those things. As you, the guy, have to do that, you have to think about those things. Well, as a tank, you're splitting those jobs into 4 different people: a driver, a gunner, a tank commander, and a loader. And the job, I guess what I'm getting at is the job is simple to do, so you can train really easily with that. However, the tank itself is a complex machine.
Oh yeah.
Any tank is a complex machine. So most of the training that is most valuable to you is to train in regards to if the tank breaks. Because, like I said, the tank is a complex machine. You have everything from track tension you have to deal with. You have to deal with the POLs, the fixings on cabling, technical issues with the fire control system, the radios. These things, for one reason or another, can and eventually will falter in one point in time. So if you're in the middle of a combat zone, you can't just stop. And like if the tank breaks down, you can't just say, "Well, I'm out of the fight." No, you fight the tank. This is a common phrase among at least Marine Corps tankers and probably Army tankers too. You fight the tank, and most of my time in the Marine Corps tank community was having a tank that was broke, for lack of a better word, and it was us fixing it in the field. So the whole idea is to say we do go into combat eventually. We are not we're not so helpless with our tank should it go down and when it will go down. So when I arrived to the fleet, I was put in a tank crew, and our tank crew we did our training, and most of our time was done in various stages of maintenance for our tank, because our tanks were so worn out, and like kind of like having an old shoe. It did the job, but it was falling apart on you, and you needed to put a bunch of duct tape everywhere. So their whole training philosophy was for us to fix these tanks and keep them in working order.
Yeah.
And should the balloon go up and we have to go into real combat somewhere, when they have their actual quality tanks, which they keep in sealed up and untouched, when they have them opened up, they're like a fresh shoe. They just work beautifully, and it's an amazing feeling. But
I mean, I served in the motorized infantry here, which is like we have the equivalent of the Striker, which is like an 8-wheeled armored personnel carrier, and we had entire exercises that lasted for like 2 weeks, where the only thing we did was to practice how to fix the vehicles, how to do what we call combat towing, which is like towing the vehicle in combat conditions. So you usually start with just the basic instructions. This is how you attach a towing cable. You start from there, and you get more advanced as the days goes, and then at the end of it you have force on force combat operations when you then practice that. Okay, this you just hit a mine, those two wheels are out, fix it, or patch it up, get out of here, and that's how it works.
Yeah, that's basically how it works. It's to get you familiar with in a worst case scenario, your tank breaks down. What do you do to get you in that kind of mindset in case the worst does happen and your tank does go down?
Yeah.
You're able to take care of it. A lot of our training was very oriented. It was kind of, in hindsight, it's kind of split right down the middle, where like 50% of it was dealing with coin and dealing with a kind of insurgency kind of fight, and the other half of it was dealing with amphibious operations.
Okay.
Getting the tank onto a ship and then getting the tank off the ship in a assault kind of context.
Yeah.
But we would do a lot of tank infantry integration. It wasn't until the later half of my enlistment that we started to do large scale combined arms warfare, and that was a lot of fun. Oh my gosh. Being at Camp Lejeune, we did most of our training in the training area that was there. So we had a tank range, and we also had the various smaller ranges where we would work with infantry or artillery and the sorts of. The thing is, having a tank also means getting to know your vehicle and getting to know your position in it, and getting to know your position in the overall combined arms formation. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is the tank has strengths regardless of what tank it is.
Oh yeah.
It has strengths and it has weaknesses, and the better you know that thing, the more effective you are in a modern battlefield setting. So I go back to Camp Lejeune. If you ever see the East Coast, it's a series of swamps and thick forests, and this environment is not exactly fitting for a tank of its capabilities. Tanks are great for open areas. Tanks have a gun that can reach out and touch somebody that infantrymen can only wish with their weaponry.
Oh yeah.
And when you put it in an environment where everything is a swamp or it's a very tight-in forest, it's like getting into a closet to get into a knife fight with another guy, and you're armed with a spear. Like it's just too big. The tank's abilities are there. You know, we got machine guns for days, and we can give you so much fire support. But a lot of our ability to see the enemy and act in certain ways is now narrowed down by the terrain. So it's one of those things where you have to be cognizant.
And there maybe it highlights the a lot of the lessons learned also from especially World War II, that you need to have infantry support in that type of environment. Yeah.
So that was training in Camp Lejeune. Training, you know, we would have annual gunnery sessions, and it was really the cool kids club to get involved in. Us as tank crews, we were always like, hey, our tank crew is better than your tank crew. Screw you guys. You guys can't score for shit on your gunnery. And it was a big competition kind of setting. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of like, it felt like high school all over again in many ways.
But it's competition. It's friendly competition to become better at your job, which means that your survivability rate usually goes up because you're better at your job and everything. It's all in the detail. And this is something that I actually find extremely both frustrating and also hard to explain to civilians, that like to actually become good at your job, you need to be very fierce. You need to be very, you know, you need to compete in everything. When you go to the gym, even if it's just we're doing bench press. Yeah, but you want to compete about it. I want to compete about this thing and the next thing and the next thing. I remember going through mortar training because that was something we had to do as forward observers. And I remember seeing the one of the mortar platoons there. They were competing within each and every mortar squad. They were just competing about who could get the rounds away the fastest, being more efficient, readying everything up, getting the aiming sticks and all these things, like just getting them out there. They're competing every single time, every single day. And after a while, that gets to you. But after a while, also you start seeing who is which squad is the best. Yeah, absolutely. Our the competition was absolutely everywhere. Platoons competed against platoons, but all our platoons, in spite of us competing each other, we were all still family. We ain't like those mouth breathers over in fucking Bravo Company, it was that kind of attitude. Like the competition was everywhere, and in hindsight, it really pushed a lot of people to get better and to be better, which was really great. And in hindsight, I wish I had been able to appreciate it more. But what else about it? Gunnery was always a fun time. It was always like we're getting to play now. You know, maintenance is one thing, and it's kind of boring when. Maintenance is kind of boring when, you know, you used to, or you're prone to the fact that you're able to shoot 120 millimeter gun and belt-fed machine guns every so often. So when we do get to go to gunnery, everyone's just, oh my god, everyone just has a blast. Like it's competition, but at the same time, it's a big stress release. You know, we go in all day and all night, going through various table gunneries, and you know, the maintenance crews. Oh, our mechanics, and yeah, it really helps the job also when you have people who love their jobs. And I think we got lucky because we had mechanics who absolutely loved their job and they loved being around each other and everything. So it was such a great time. Everything helps when it comes to stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
we. I got a story. One I remember. I think it was my second gunnery. Our acting first sergeant, so the administrative NCO, the first sergeant of the company. He's in charge of making sure the company's still running as it should, making sure everyone's training is in order, or making sure we're fed, we got fuel and all that stuff for our tanks. And I think it was on the second night we were going through our night tables, and this is a remote part of Camp Lejeune. There's plenty of wildlife that goes around the place, and you're not supposed to mess with the wildlife, and that's an understood thing. But it doesn't help the wildlife if the wildlife falls in line with our ranges.
Ah, okay.
So,
Oh yeah.
so I guess what I mean is one of our engagements is it's supposed to be a light armor with troop engagement. So the whole thing is like fire MPAT and then coax troops and everything. Well, fire MPAT and the gunner is starting to engage the troops, and the radio is speaking, so everyone in the camp can hear how the engagements are going, and we hear them fire and they engage, and then there's a ceasefire, and then it gets quiet for a little while, and then they continue on as such. I was amongst one of the first crews to go, so we were cleaning up our tank, making sure it was ready for the morning engagement, and then we were going to bed. So we do that, and the next morning our first sergeant shows up, and apparently he had been barbecuing all night because there was a family of deer who got spooked into our range from the gunfire, and they walked right through or rather they ran right through the coax troops engagement. So this 240 going off in these troops, and the deer were trying to run through that, and they managed to cut down one deer. So I guess our company leadership was just kind of like, well, we can't. If we report this, we might get in trouble. So and then our first sergeant was thinking on his toes, and he was like, "I'll be right back." He went back to his house, pulled out a bunch of not knife cleaning gear, but butchering tools and everything.
Oh yeah.
And he got that one deer that didn't make it. They pulled it back to the camp. He skinned it, he cleaned it up, and he cooked them overnight. So the next morning, instead of us having our government-issued breakfast and MREs, he actually was giving us venison as we were going through the day's safety brief. So it was nothing happened.
Nothing happened. No one saw anything.
But we managed to have venison for breakfast. So that was a great little thing. Yeah.
Also, going back to one thing that you talked about earlier when it comes to training on your tank or on the vehicle that you're assigned to, just how to get off a ship, how to be efficient in different positions inside your vehicle. All of these things is also something that I think a lot of civilians don't really understand. They think it's all about the fighting, being inside of there, shooting the gun, tactical understanding, talking about the radio, and maybe fixing up your tank and only doing those type of things. But it's so much that goes into it, and that's usually one of the reasons why other nations that have maybe not have troops that have been training for as long or have not been training those things, that's usually why they fail when it actually comes time to fight, because they have not been training these logistics things. They have only been driving their tank up on the field, shooting a little bit of a target, and maybe they've been training at the same range. So they know the range is everything. They haven't been practicing on shooting at moving targets, etc. So it's so much that goes into it, and this is also a thing that you never get done as a military member. You never reach, okay, you're fully trained now, you don't need to train anymore. No, you always need to keep practicing in order to be as good as you were as when you left that MOS school.
Absolutely. I remember not in our gunneries, but one facet of our training as tankers or as a tank battalion was always to keep in touch of where our logistical trains were. So we would have trucks that are loaded down, notionally sometimes, but they'd be loaded down with our fuel, our ammunition, our food, and our prolonged operations would always be with them in mind. Where are some secure areas we're at? Where can we reconnoiter so we can top off on our fuel, ammunition, and so on and so forth. So this was also a major facet of our training, and we may not have gunned as often as we wanted to, because to be fair, like the Marine Corps is a very penny pinching branch, and the fact of the matter is too that for the Marine Corps, well, tanks are an expensive venture, so we would do a lot of training of notionally engaging with ammunition and main gun and everything like that. But a lot of our stuff was dealing with not fuel storages, but rather where do we get fuel next? Okay, we're going to be in a defensive position at night. The engine's going to be running. How much fuel we're going to have in the morning? These kind of questions, and this is something that just over time you learn, and it just sits in your in the back of your head. Well, we did this last time, and the next morning we had this much fuel left. So this is what we got to be prepared for, and it's one of those things to make things move more smoothly and to keep engaged in the fight. We would put these questions and have to address them as they go. So this was the kind of training that they wanted us to do. And it goes back to the whole logistical chain, because the Abrams itself, it's a very resource hungry vehicle, be it fuel, POLs, maintenance, and everything, and being very cognizant about that logistical aspect of it and the supply and the maintenance is just as important as shooting and gunning.
Oh yeah.
And doing all the cool guy combat arms stuff, because half the fight is knowing how to fight. The other half is actually the violence. Yeah.
But so now you're a tanker, and something else that I've understood is kind of unique to the Marine Corps is the overall Marine Corps life, as in how it is just to be a Marine, living on the bases and everything. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. I'll go with like a typical day in the tank battalion. So in garrison at Camp Lejeune, we were in a barracks square where one line of barracks was just tankers. The entire tank battalion was there. Another line was full of our logistical arm, our mechanics, our supply guys, and so on and so forth. And the other two barracks were infantrymen from a from one of our, I think it was 6th Marines, or it was 8th Marines. I think it was 6th Marines. They were our neighbors in our barrack square. And I'm laughing right now because we wouldn't get along.
There we go.
Yeah, but it was always that kind of like moto boner, like fuck you, fuck you, I'm a grunt, and fuck you, I'm a tanker. It's that kind of thing. Like, but I'll get back to that in a moment. I'm gonna just try and describe a typical day. So, typical day would start at about 04:30, 05 to wake up and do morning PT, usually about 45 minutes to an hour. And that is at the lowest discretion or the lowest leadership level. So corporals, sergeants, we would run PT, and it would go from there.
So what was the typical PT, physical training?
Anywhere between doing 3-mile runs to getting into combatives with one of the other squads, because we got to settle beefs and everything like that. And we'd have pull-up sessions, kind of hit training, high intensity, everything from burpees to pull-ups, then back to running sprints, doing stuff like that, and just to keep our heart rate going. And then that would go on till about, let's say, from 05 to 06, and we'd have to be at the ramp like at 6:45, 6:30, even at 06 sometimes, but that was on occasions where we had to do more maintenance on our vehicles for an inspection. But we would typically have about 30 minutes to get from finishing PT, shit, shower, shave, get some food in our stomachs, or bring some food to the ramp, and from about 6:30 and on,
Mm-hmm.
we're at the ramp. We're starting our day, and we have a checklist full of maintenance issues that we need to deal with as individual tanks, as platoons, as a whole company, even, and that would be our daily thing. So from 6:30 on, we are untarping the tanks. We are opening them up, getting them ready for our maintenance crews and us to go through them. And this goes on till about 11 o'clock. And come 11 o'clock, we start our lunch rotation, where guys will have maybe 30 minutes to go grab food, come back, or grab food, eat, and then come back. And that was from like 11 to 1. And then from 1 is we would have more maintenance issues, or rather, we continue with our workday from 1 till about. We're supposed to be done by 17:30.
Okay. Yep.
What usually happens is 17:30 comes along, and there's some last minute issue that would come down from our platoon sergeant or the maintenance chief, and we'd be stuck there for another hour or so. And this was this was a major grinding point, especially later on, because the chow hall that we were allowed to go to, their hours were only very specific, and it was something like 16:30 till 1800. Yeah, like 16, like it was like 2.5 hours where they were open, and because we typically finished midway through that time and had no time to get to the chow hall after that, a lot of guys would end up like having to eat something that they'd have to pick up after working hours, and it was a typical thing.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, so work typically ended around 18:30, sometimes 19:30 and 2000. And yeah, then we have the night off. Started it all over again the next day. 04:30, 05 start PT, and the cycle continues. So that's our typical day. Come to life on Camp Lejeune, though. Monday through Wednesday is as I described, like that. But Thursdays are field days, and that's where we have to do our cleaning and inspecting for Friday mornings. So Thursdays we would come to work, go through our usual process, but at about 16:30 or so, we would be released, so we can go back to our barracks room, do a thorough clean, and that would entail everything from mopping the floors to cleaning out our vents to doing our laundry, making sure everything's good. And our corporals and sergeants would come and inspect our rooms, and the next morning it would be inspected or not. They never told our leadership when the captain or when the master sergeant was going to come by and inspect our rooms.
Yeah.
So it was always a be ready, but nothing would happen kind of a thing. And so then Friday morning would roll along, and once we get through inspection, there's almost a celebratory like feeling in the air. It's like we just made it. And so like work goes through. It usually goes by pretty quick on a Friday because everyone's just so excited. And Friday afternoon, we're waiting for the weekend brief, and that also like usually goes from no earlier than 16:30, sometimes as late as 1800, and everyone's so like stressing about it because our weekends are here and there's so little time that we have to ourselves, and that's just how the battalion was run.
Yeah.
So yeah, the weekend would come, and as soon as we had our final formation and everyone just kind of split, we had 2.5 days to ourselves where we go out as tank crews to the bars and shit, or we go out to a college town like maybe 3 hours away on the road. Yeah, and or we just stayed in and slept and played video games and barbecued. I like to barbecue, so I would
we have
do
that
that.
picture of you barbecuing.
Yeah.
Yeah, showing
And
it right now. Yeah.
yeah, so we would do that. It the funny thing is we're technically not supposed to have a fire in the barracks, but uh, it's brick, and the OOD would usually be pretty chill about it, and if they weren't, they would have like some fajita that I would cook up, and they'd have some of that.
Oh, there you
So
go. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, so that's typical. At Camp Lejeune, also, I gotta mention, there's a little bar called Heroes Bar, and that's our barracks was just adjacent to that. You could literally low crawl from our barracks to the bar and be there, like have plenty of drinks and low crawl back. But that bar was such a great like little resource there for just like guys wanting to get drunk or just chill out and relax. The thing is, though, it would also be a point of conflict, and I say conflict because the 6th Marine infantry guys would also go to that bar, and typically everyone's too tired from the day to really mess with each other.
Yeah.
So we would just drink our beers, have our time with our friends, and that'd be it. But there, every so often, there'd be one motherfucker, like from either side, who would get too drunk and just start a scene, and then it would turn into a barracks brawl again.
Again, that little detail there. Again, yeah.
Yeah. I think my most memorable one was I was on the second deck, and Charlie Company was on the outside of our area of our barracks from the square, and on the inside bottom is Alpha Company. And anyway, so a couple of grunts go over to Heroes Bar, and they got really drunk, and either they got confused or they were trying to start shit. They went over to our barracks and started knocking on the doors for Alpha Company. And lo and behold, oh my god, they made the worst mistake because they knocked on one door, and we had oh gosh, I forgot his last name, but he was a big black Alabaman sergeant who was solid 230 pounds of muscle, standing at like 6'4". He was a giant of a man.
Okay.
And these two drunk grunts started trying to pick a fight with him. He was like, "No, we ain't doing this. I ain't about this right now." But they were persisting, and then suddenly they threw a punch, and he put them both down on the ground and was just like holding them down with his knees. And then, and then 6 Marines, they can all see this because the barracks is right there, and they're like, "What the fuck?" And then suddenly everyone starts coming out with like they have their Kevlars on, they have their flak vests on, and everyone's like ready to pounce. Alpha Company starts rolling out. Bravo is upstairs, and they start rolling out. And suddenly there's this big standoff. and then suddenly some fights start getting off along the edges of the entire barracks ground, and that's when the MPs start showing up. But the MPs, there was only 2 of them, and at this point there was maybe about 24 guys engaged at some point or another with each other.
Oh shit!
So the MPs were just kind of like, "Yeah, we're just gonna wait. We're just gonna wait this one out."
Yeah.
And so shit, like that shit went on for maybe about 25-30 minutes, and and I wasn't in the fight. I was actually upstairs, and I was actually like just watching them because there's plenty of guys down there just kind of like, "Holy shit, this is great." Just had a beer and everything like that. And in the end, people like the NCO started showing up. Everyone started to calm the fuck down, and the MPs like came in, and they were trying to figure out the situation with the OD and everything like that. And nothing ended up happening. It was just a drunken brawl, and it would be too much paperwork for the night for them to deal with. So they're just kind of like, "Don't do it again. Go away." So we typically had an event like that about every 6 to 8 months. So yeah.
So it happens on a regular basis then.
On a regular basis, and it's just you got a bunch of drunk alpha males who are, they're bored or some shit like that, and they just get into fights.
There you go.
Yeah.
So we got you went through boot camp, tank school, overall life in the Marine Corps, And then comes the next big question: why did you decide to leave?
I've been thinking about that a lot, and a lot of it I regret getting out the way I did, but I'm also happy I did got out. So it's never a simple answer.
Yeah.
I guess I'll start it off like this. Any organization in the world, any organization is run by people. People run organizations. Be it you could have a mom and pop shop, or you could have the biggest, baddest spacefaring organization in the world. It's still run by people.
Yep.
What am I getting at that is that there's good and bad people, and it's like a spectrum. There's really good, and then there's really bad, and people all stay within this kind of spectrum thing. And the thing about the military is that these are just people in this spectrum, and they're in charge of your entire career, and they're above you. They're your leadership.
Yeah.
So, I guess what I'm getting at is, I had been under the leadership at the later half of my enlistment, under the leadership of some really, really shitty assholes that ruined people's careers to excel in their own. So there was a lot of career politics that were going on that was outside of tanking. You know, tanking was still great. It was just tanking had to contend with the politics of the battalion for whatever reason.
Yep.
And so I guess what I'm getting at is, when you join an organization like a tank battalion, you have no idea what kind of people are in there, and you can have the best people and the worst people at the same time, and they're all above you and below you in terms of leadership. And in my case, I had a bad taste in my mouth from certain leadership in my time that were my superiors, that I wanted nothing to do with them, the organization at all. I was just I needed a long break, and I needed to just get away from this environment.
Yep.
And essentially that was the mindset I had for the last 6 to 8 months of my enlistment. And when the window opened up for me to reenlist, I was, nope, I ain't doing it. No, I ain't dealing with you people anymore like that. And I didn't think at the time that tanking was a important enough livelihood than my sanity. And so I realized that's what the sacrifice meant, that if I got out, I wasn't gonna be able to do this anymore. And at the time I thought it was a perfectly fine trade-off.
Yeah.
And I say that the way I do now because, oh man, tanking was a lot of fun. Tanking was great. And I'm still having to remind myself, there were still those people there. There were still those people who stuck around and made that environment the way it was. So I guess if there's a bit of wisdom I should pass on from my experience in this regard, it's that things are temporary, but you also have to contend with the fact that things are what they are. So you have if you have leadership that doesn't treat people well at all, that's something you got to deal with, and it's up to you to either suck it up or to do what you got to do, and that's something you got to dig down deep in yourself and ask yourself, is it worth it? So so that's why I got out.
But it's interesting that you say that, because it's pretty much exactly the same reason I got out. I ran into an officer that hadn't been around training people for basic training for 20 years. He was an up and coming officer, but then he did some stuff and behaved very badly. So he got moved to what we call the Home Guard, which is kind of like the National Guard. And then from there because they didn't have anyone else. They assigned him as the kind of like the training commander for all the instructors and everything in order to train these people. And he was like, the new book on how to do stuff, I don't care about it. I like the way of training that I did back in the 70s and 80s. We're gonna do it this way. So as soon as I did stuff according to the manual and how you're supposed to do stuff, I almost got written up every single time. He reported me for everything I did. It's like, I told you to do it this way. It's like, well, I'm just doing it according to the book. Am I not supposed to do that? So it kept going on like this and this and this until I actually started to challenge his reports. With signed testimony from other people and saying like, this is not how it went down. And then, just the starting thing of that also, they told me from the start, like, anyone here out of the NCOs that we had at the time want to do 6 months of training a basic training company. It usually takes 6 months because they have to go through the MOS school before we turn them out into the units and everything. So the training itself is longer. And we want to do it at 6 months. It's here on the main base and everything. There's nothing special about it because we got nothing really going on in the next coming 6 months. And I was like, I'll do it. I mean, if it's here on the base, why not? But then they changed that to 1 year, but on the other side of the county, you could say. And so we had to live there. We only had a certain amount of beds. The barracks that we were living in had, what's it called, asbestos.
Asbestos.
Yeah, asbestos. So they'd been like closed for human conditions since 2006, but we had to stay there for a year. And they were so old and run down. These barracks were actually created to hold German POWs who were escaping from Estonia during the Second World War. And those were the barracks we had to live in and train these recruits. And the recruits got like a newly built barracks. Everything was nice. The new shower hall and everything. Instructors, go over there, shut your face. And then you get written up for everything. You get reported for everything you do. And then they're like, "Oh, your contract is ending. Do you want to extend it?" No.
No.
No. I do not. Yeah.
Gosh,
but looking back, do you feel like your experience in the Marine Corps, like, was it worth it?
Was it worth it? Hell yeah, it was worth it. It was worth it for the people that I met there, for the lessons I learned, both good and bad. It was I wouldn't change a thing about it. I wouldn't have changed a thing about it. I'm thinking about it right now. It's funny you bring that up because I mean, I had a guy, and the big deciding moment for me to get out was one night while I was on Firewatch. It was my first night as an NCO in this regard, and we had a guy who was he was just one of the regular Joes. He was in one of the other companies, but he was just one of the guys we would see on the tank ramp. And, like, everyone's busy, so, no one really paid attention to each other unless we're in the same company. But anyway, this guy had essentially been taken to the very edge of his sanity. He was extremely exhausted.
Okay.
The schedule they had him on was he was losing sleep. He couldn't deal with issues that were happening at home, and he essentially had a breaking point. This one night, he had hurt himself, and he was bleeding all over himself, and he had no. Well, I'm jumping around things. He had hurt himself, and we were trying to just keep him calm and get the emergency services over to us, the paramedics and everything, to come and take care of him.
Yeah.
I mean, as quick as it is for me to snap my fingers, he was in a very aggressive mood, and then he would be a very passive and very wincing in pain kind of attitude. He was very unstable, but we kept him calm for as much as we could, and essentially, the paramedics arrived, the PMO arrived. When we got him strapped onto one of their medic beds, and they shipped him to the hospital. Well, I found out later that they didn't find any drugs in his system. His roommate said there's no narcotics or anything like that. He was for all intents and purposes, just strung out, exhausted, and he snapped. Well, what got that all happened, and at that point, I realized that like, hey, this lifestyle it's not something you can keep on going forever. And
Yeah.
this guy just had his breaking point in that regard. But the kicker to all this was that 2 weeks later they brought him back from the hospital, and they were filing him back into the company, or his company, doing all the paperwork that he was back, and he was clearly. I remember seeing him at the command post, going through the offices, and he was clearly not ready.
Yeah.
All I remember was that week, some of the guys from Alpha told me that he had another incident, and they took him to an asylum or somewhere, some psych ward that was upstate in Virginia from us. And it was one of those things like, holy crap, this battalion had a guy who was in deep trouble and he needed help, and they just put him back on the line. He's going to be fine. They had that attitude of like, he's not pulling his own weight. We need him on the line. We need him to work, regardless of how he was doing or how people were treating each other. And it's one of those things that stuck with me. Like, I ask myself sometimes, like, what would have been if that guy had never joined up? Would he have had the same mental state? Would he have been found in an asylum somewhere? It's one of those things.
But it's also a very typical military thing, where it's kind of like, it's kind of like you're preparing for the big war at all times, where it's kind of like, this guy, he's fine enough, get him back out. That you don't really listen to, and instead of giving him maybe, assigning him to something that is nicer, where he can control himself a little bit more, and just giving him some time, and then after, actually, if they see that he's not getting better, medically discharge him. He's not fit to do this anymore.
Yeah, the one thing they tell us when we were getting into the Marine Corps was there's three things you have to balance. It's the first and foremost, it's the mission. Secondly, it's the men that you got to take care of, and thirdly, it's yourselves that you got to take care of, because all those things are supposed to be adding to one another and leading to success and victory. But that's what they teach us. And the thing is, certain organizations, all there is there's only the mission, and the mission. Everything else is not even secondary. It's not even a thought.
Yeah.
You just have to submit, and that's the problem, because this is a broad statement on that, because that's just how people were treating it. And my experience in the Marine Corps with individuals is different, because I've also, in the same time, this terrible organization that treats people like shit, I've met some of the best people I've ever met in my life in the Marine Corps. And it's this weird dichotomy, because it's hard to describe to civilians. It's like, you can, in the best of times and the worst of times, you know who people are, especially in shitty situations. And I learned a lot about myself from this shitty organization that it was, and it's all because of not the Marine Corps, but the people that were running in it. I feel like I'm dancing around circles, but
no.
Anyway.
I completely understand it. It's kind of shocking to me to hear that, how similar it is, because I've had this exactly the same conversation with a guy who used to be Royal Marine, the British military, and it's exactly the same. And usually it's the same type of people that do these things. They've either had bad luck with something in their careers and have to take it out on people, or they're just stuck, not in a position where they want to be.
It's a complex thing, man. I mean, especially when it comes to like leadership and people who run these organizations, it's a balance of treating your people right, but also getting the mission right, and excelling your own career. Or are you gonna be political about it or not? It's. I mean, we can dive into this subject and into forever, man. I mean, it's even thinking about the Marine Corps and my time now as a National Guardsman, there's some parallels, and this is why I believe like this whole spectrum of people lives in the organizations that you are involved in, and you can have both the best people and the worst people in leadership positions who will influence your experience for better or worse. So, and it's a literal like roll the dice. You have no idea. But yeah.
So moving on now, we've been talking through your basic training, tanker school, a lot of other things, normal life in the Marine Corps and everything. But then we're starting talking about you leaving the military now, and I've just gone through this myself. I've been out for like 2.5 years now from the Swedish military after around 10 years. I actually don't know exactly how long it was. I'm an idiot, but it's somewhere around there, 10 years.
Yeah.
It's a very, very weird thing. Like for me, it felt like getting out of prison. You're used to being told, what to do. You eat during these times. You're supposed to do this. They own you. They control you. You think you're gonna go on some type of leave and do something. They take that away from you. The uncertainty, which is something that a lot of people that I hear about who have gone through military training and then get out and get into the reserves or something. That's the thing they tell me. Oh, the thing that I couldn't stand it. The uncertainty. You don't know anything that is going to happen and everything. But
yeah,
how did it feel to leave active duty, and what was your situation after that? Did you move back home? Did you have any certain plan, or were you like, I just need to get out of this, and what happens?
Yeah, I just remember getting out, and I left Camp Lejeune, and my dad he flew up to Camp Lejeune so he can drive with me back to Texas from North Carolina, which was it turned into like a 30-hour drive. But anyway, I mentioned earlier that I went to that tank museum or that lot.
Yeah.
Well, I went back. We were on the road, and I convinced my dad we should go check that place out one last time, and I convinced him that we did, and it was a lot of fun to go back there, and it felt really good to be back there. But anyway, back on the subject, getting out was just an immense sense of relief. I had this attitude of I need to de-stress, and I need to just like let out a lot of things that were on my mind, and just do what I want, because especially being in a military mindset, never mind the Marine Corps, everything is controlled, everything is high intensity, and you only have so much time to de-stress. So all that time spent distressing never really amounted much. But when I finally got out, I was able to just focus on myself, focus on just like finding myself again, doing what I want to do, and that's the attitude I had. I was just, I just needed the long break, and I did. When I got out, I spent a lot of time just trying to figure out what I want to do now. I thought to myself that I have done the thing. I have enlisted in the Marine Corps, and I got out of it honorably. And well, what now? It was that kind of thing, because when I was younger, I was very short-sighted, and I had I had a lot to prove to myself by going to the Marine Corps, but I didn't put any thought into really what would come after, or rather, yeah, I had an idea of what I wanted to do after, but it was such a different thing from when I actually got out. Like I was a completely different person. So I had the GI Bill now, so I thought, well, I'm gonna go back to school and just go from there, get my feet back on the ground, and just get going. And I got out in the spring of April 26th, 2016, and I spent the next 6 months just going back to school, going back into the summer. I got my own apartment, and I started going to school and working light jobs just to get my feet on the ground and doing something, because I also couldn't stand just living in my folks' home for a bit.
Yeah.
Which I was. For about 3 or 4 months. No, about 3 months. I was at my folks' home, just reintegrating back with them. I hadn't seen them for the 4 years I was gone, aside from the times I got to go home for Christmas, and those were by and large like they were long breaks in between. So it would be like 12 months away, 2 weeks back at home, 12 months away, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So the 3 months back home was very therapeutic. I grew a big beard like everyone does.
It's the same things. It's the same things. You know, you have to shave every single day. Now I'm getting a beard. I have to PT every day. Now I'm not PTing. It's all of the same things. It's eating the stuff. It's living the life. It's like just expressing yourself, to show to yourself, to get it into your head that you're now free.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And I had that. I'll call it detoxing. I had that detoxing mindset for about 3 months, and then I was like, finally, all right, I'm done now. Let's go and see what we can do. And I started going back to school. I went to a CrossFit gym, and I I started to realize that, you know what, I still wanted to wear the uniform. I was still I wasn't done yet, and I was more experienced at that point and wiser. And I thought to myself, this is something that could still happen. And so I went to go check. I went to a National Guard recruiter, and I just started talking to them about it and figuring out what life is like with the National Guard. And I told him I was looking for a deployment. I was looking for any kind of deployment. And he said that the Army deploys a lot. The National Guard in particular does a lot of deployments that aren't exactly combat deployments, because at that time it was late 2016, and the way the world was, everyone was starting to pull out from the regular combat deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq. So deployments like that had dried up, but there were deployments to other posts around the world, like Somalia, for example, Kuwait, Afghanistan to some extent. I know I mentioned them earlier, but all these other little deployments that the regular Army needed to have rotation through, and they relied on the National Guard to do that. So I said I wanted to be a part of that. It's like, okay, well, Texas National Guard, it's a pretty big organization in itself. There's a good chance you will, very high likely chance you will. So I said, okay, let's do this, and I wanted to stick in combat arms, so I said let's do the infantry, because they're the ones who are going to get sent to these places, and it's just line infantry, nothing special, but it's it was National Guard infantry, and because I had been in the Marines and I had left the Marines 6 months prior to that, I met the qualifications that I didn't have to go through the Army boot camp, and somewhere down the line I was going to have to go through Army infantry school, which is it's a complicated thing to talk about, because the Army is such a big organization, and the National Guard is made even more complex by that. But for all intents and purposes, the Army considered me a tanker in the National Guard for the time being. That's as a placemaker until I could actually get the training as an infantryman. So we'll get back into that. So fall 2016, I'm going to school. I'm starting my education as in global affairs. I had the mindset that I wanted to work for the State Department or work for any kind of intelligence gathering ABC organization there was out there. CIA, FBI. I wanted to do that, to be a desk jockey, basically, and work in relation to history, or become an analyst in some form or fashion. So I thought this was the way I was going to do it. I was going to go get my education, pair it up with my history degree and my background as a Marine. It was going to work out that way. And so I started that. in the fall of 2016. Coupled that with my National Guard service, and it's kind of been that's been steadily the case since. I have monthly drill sessions. We had over the summer we have an AT where we do like a platoon lane where we go on assaults and covering fires and learn all the regular infantry stuff, or relearn it, I should say. And we had a deployment come by, and this was 2018 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, from 2016 to 2018, I was in the National Guard as a tanker in an infantry unit.
Yep.
Which is administratively that's a no-go. Career-wise, I'm not going to be going anywhere until I'm trained as an infantryman.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our admin NCO, he I'm going back to that whole spectrum thing about like people in their jobs and treating people like shit. He's on the bad end. Well, that's from my perspective. He handled the officers and the staff NCO of the unit extremely well, and he took care of them from an administrative perspective.
Yep.
I followed the proper chain in my unit. I told my team leader told our squad leader, our platoon leader, so on and so forth, to get to him, say, hey, now's the time. I got an open window this summer. Let's go to Army Infantry School so I can get this thing out of the way,
mm-hmm.
and I'll be a trained infantryman. And for those first 2 years, something else has gotten in the way. Hey, I need to train my replacement, or on the other hand, hey, he needed to handle the captain's orders, and he wouldn't just file my paperwork and submit my stuff so I could go to the school over the summer. And that was my only window of opportunity, was over the summer, because I'm going to school in the spring and the fall, and the summer was my only window for that. So, hold on. It's falling. There we go.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah. And, summer was my only window of opportunity. But every time I applied for it and every time I pressured for it, it's kind of like, there's other things they need to handle right
mm-hmm.
now. You're just an E4. We'll deal with you some other time. Well, lo and behold, start of spring of 2019, I want to say, or no, fall of 2018, where we were going on deployment. We were going to be going to the Horn of Africa. Yes, that's excellent. I'm excited. Let's do this.
Let's do this, yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Well, we got an opportunity for you to go to infantry school now, but you won't be able to go on deployment with us. Yeah, so I was kind of like, nah, I came here to go on deployment, so I'm going to go and do that. I can do this stuff later, no worries. So I said, let's go on deployment. He's like, okay, well, you won't be promotable, but you'll be among us. So I got classified as a 19 kilo, which is tanker in the Army, and I was in an infantry unit, and I was just one of the guys. I integrated just fine. There's plenty of other non-grunts and Marines too who are in our company. So I got along well with everybody. But during that pre-deployment phase, about a good 4 or 5 months, we were upping the tempo, doing all the training we had to do. We got to our pre-deployment area, which was Fort Bliss. We were leaving from Fort Bliss to go to the Horn of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And two weeks prior to us getting on the plane and going, we were doing everything from crows training to doing defensive fob operations. All these little things that we were expected to know as an infantry company.
Yep. And
we had a PT session, and my kneecap, or rather my other knee, decided to implode upon itself.
Oh wow!
So,
but it wasn't the same knee that you injured before you went into the Marine Corps. No,
this was the other knee this time. It's like the knee that had the surgery from before the Marine Corps. It was now, I was like the $6 million man. It couldn't be touched. But the other knee that hadn't been affected I guess 4 years of active duty Marine Corps just grinded it away, and then
Yeah.
we were doing PT at Fort Bliss, and I did a burpee. I think it was we were just doing something simple to get get the blood flowing, and we were all over some rocky terrain, just like really gravelly ground. And I was doing a burpee. I got to number 7 when I jumped up and I landed. And as I landed, I felt my knee just like snap
Yeah.
very loudly and very painfully. And I was like, ah. And my knee turned into a football, and it was hugely swollen. And they had to get an MRI and everything. And they were like, well, looks like you're not going with us to Africa. Oh, so so yeah, my ACL and my MCL were not just torn, but absolutely like severed, just like cleanly, and it was all because of the pressure of jumping.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it just weakened over time, and then once it actually came to it, it just like ripped.
Yeah.
But anyway, what happened after that? They gave me the option to either stay there at Fort Bliss or to get transferred over to Fort Sam, which was near my home of record. And I opted to get transferred to Fort Sam because I'll be near home. They have an excellent therapy battalion over there. It's the Warrior Transition Battalion, and my therapy began there. They do a lot of sports medicine too. So injuries like the ones that I had,
Mm-hmm.
they wrote the book on for recovery. So these were the subject matter experts for my kind of surgery. And yeah, while my boys went over to Africa and did their, I think it was a 9-month deployment. I spent 9 months and then 3 more months getting my knee fixed up, not once but twice. Because about month 8, I was going through the final phases of my therapy, which included various tests. Can I run? Can I squat? Can I do all these things? And it was I had to do a kind of long jump or like a hopscotch with that leg. And on the third jump of that, instead of my ACL and my MCL, because they were fine, they were the surgery points, my kneecap decided to split in half.
Oh God, dude.
Dude, it was the absolute, like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
Do I have any control over my life? It was just insane. But
So like
that afternoon, huh?
Yes, so you're finally about to go. You join the guard to do this. You're going over there. You mess up your knee once, and then as you're going through recovery or rehabilitation, maybe,
Yeah.
it happens again.
Mm-hmm. Same knee too. It's the same knee, and yeah. I mean, I had gotten the lease to my apartment like that week. I was ready to go. Everything was set to go. And yeah, it didn't. The silver lining to this whole thing, though, was that if my knee was already this far off, or my kneecap was this far broken, if I had broken my knee outside of the window that of therapy and everything,
Mm-hmm.
I would have had to go through the long way around to get it fixed through the VA, through get an appointment. So the silver lining is that because it happened while I was in therapy and under the supervision of the Army, it was bought and paid for, and it was also going to be just put in my record, taken care of. I just needed to stay another 4 months because this was even an easier operation for them and therapy session for them. So, yeah. In that time, I was at the Warrior Transition Battalion, and I'll tell you what, it's a very humbling experience to be there. There's a lot of guys who they had injuries like me, and they just needed to get back on their feet. But there's also a lot of guys and girls who had issues like they were dealing with cancer, or they were dealing with lost limbs, all these other really scarring, life-changing events. And it was very humbling to me, and I learned that I had to really appreciate where I was and what I could do with my life. So it was another kind of eye-opening experience to me, and I made some friends while I was there, and I keep in touch with them. And yeah, it's really important, especially in that environment, to maintain a sense of community and checking on your buddies and stuff. Not just like arbitrarily, making awareness a thing, making mental awareness a thing,
Yeah.
but literally like, hey man, how's it going, man? I haven't heard from you for a while, and just like talking to them and getting in touch with them again, because it's really important to reach out.
It
I
is.
learned at that place that it's really important to reach out to
It
people.
really is. Sometimes it's just a message. Like sometimes I get from people that I served with. They know that I've been through like a lot, and I got my diagnosis with PTSD and all these things. Sometimes they just write you a message like have a nice day. Just like that in the messenger, and they know that I will get back to them at some point. But right now I'm doing stuff, and I have to focus on other things. I have to learn to be a civilian. But just getting that message, it makes your whole day.
Yeah, absolutely, dude.
I'm getting a question here though. What is a transition battalion?
Warrior Transition Battalion is in a shortest term as possible. It's like a halfway house. So the Army. The Army runs it, I believe. It's like the parent organization, but all manners of servicemen from all branches come here. So I saw Marines, I saw Air Force, and I saw sailors as well. And this is basically, it's supposed to be a place of healing and recovery.
Okay.
Whether it means for you to get back on your feet and get back into the unit, or to transition back out into civilian life. So they would have programs available to guys who, depending on your situation, if you're going back in, you're going to be put into a lot of PT-oriented and career-oriented personnel. And it's not so much that, how do I say it? It's not an environment where they command you. You are going to do a thing, and this is how it's going to be done. This is at your own pace. We want to know what you want to do, and we're going to move as you heal. Does that make sense?
That makes absolute sense. And I'm actually very glad that, the United States military is a big organization. I'm very glad that they're starting to have units like this because it also makes the transition from being a military into the civilian world easier.
Yeah. Yeah, and in my case, because I was going back to the National Guard, I fit in this very niche category where I was getting out in their eyes, but I'm going to be going back to National Guard service. So what that meant for me is I got to get in touch with a lot of career-oriented people, and I thought to myself, you know what I really like? I really like analyzing, and I like history. So I got started there at Fort Sam, the Army Medical Museum, and that's kind of where I put my feet on the ground. I thought, all right, this is what I want to do, and gears kind of shift in that sense. But I learned how to. I got in touch with them, and they gave me a program to be in an internship with them, where I would come in and be a museum hand or work in the archives, work in the artifact collections, and just really just embrace military history in relations to the Army medical field, and then some, because there's plenty of information there. And I say information because it hasn't been cataloged, it hasn't been categorized. There's just boxes and boxes of just stuff that people have donated to the museum, and it's literally been lost to time.
Didn't you say something that it has mostly to do with Civil War stuff?
Oh no, that's later on.
Okay.
And that's the thing too, because there's even that there. The focus of the Army Medical Museum was on topics that's related to the Army Medical Branch, its history, its impact upon the United States history, and so on and so forth. But they get a lot of donations from other people as well. So on one hand, I will be going over letters written home from a Civil War veteran, and they're just private letters, and they were donated to the museum, and I would have to catalog them and categorize them so I can put them in our archive at that museum. and that'd be a set deal. People can now research that and look it up. And then on the other hand, I'll open up a box and there's a whole bunch of Nazi memorabilia in there. I'm like, holy crap, this is pretty cool, but it doesn't pertain to our museum. So we would seal it back up, make some calls, or rather, I would tell our curator the situation or our archivist, whoever's above me, and say, hey, we got this box here with this stuff. So they would make a call to another sister museum somewhere that handles that kind of stuff and say, hey, we got this stuff that's really more y'all's department. Would you guys like it over there? So, depending on what they say, we would package it up, ship it out over to them, or we would package it up and put it in our archive in a miscellaneous category.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a wide range of topics. It was really where I really got to experience military history and its impact, and how little people understand and appreciate the details. History it's a wonderful thing, and a lot of the little perspective and context gets lost to popular history.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, especially now, I start thinking to myself, the History Channel was a great thing for me growing up, but now that I see it and how they do their programming, aside from all the reality TV that they do, the history that they used to teach was so broadly stroked, was so badly handled. They make these wild and technically correct statements, but it doesn't help anybody because it's still there's so many little details and nuances and perspectives that there's just so much more to study on that. And I just wish people would understand that, especially working in a museum for that, and internshipping and getting all the archival work done, that there's so much more to learn from an individual's perspective and a broader history
Mm-hmm.
perspective. So
it's not just about knowledge, but it's also to understanding your past so that you don't do the same mistakes again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's not like there's it's all just exploration and stuff, because there's some funny things that happen. For example, the Army Medical the Army Medical Museum's history department, their historians get commissioned by individuals to go and look up certain aspects of their history. For example, we had a doctor come in and he commissioned one of our historians to look up his grandfather's unit in World War I.
All right.
He gave him a time frame, he gave him the unit, and he just went off from there. It was an investigation at that point. And a couple weeks had passed from that, and the guy comes back, and I'm the one who brought him in, and he's blabbing in my ear about his grandfather. He was a medic. He got blown up by the Germans. He survived a German bayonet charge, machine gun fire.
No,
and all
everything.
This stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I bring him to the archives room where we're gonna have our meeting, and our historian comes by, and his face is absolutely red. He's trying not to laugh so hard, and I have no idea why. And sure enough, he lays it on top of him and says, "Look, all right, this is our history of your grandfather in his unit. The unit showed up in France at this time. There was only 3 months left of the war. His unit never went to the front. His unit never saw combat. The only event that your grandfather's unit ever got involved with was overseeing an army boxing match, and that's all the combat that your grandfather saw."
Yeah.
And the doctor was just kind of like, "Oh my god!" He was speechless. And then the icing on the cake of all this was like, okay, well, here's all the information that I've made copies for you to have, and here's this other bit as well. And it was a medical receipt for his grandfather. His grandfather had to stay back as his unit got rotated back to the United States to get disbanded. He had to stay back because he caught VD.
Oh, so he
yeah.
There you go.
his grandfather told this whole story to his grandkids about what he did in the war, and the fact of the matter was, just by studying the history, he didn't do any of the things, and this doctor was utterly like just his face had gone white. His whole life has been a lie at this point.
But it's funny how that goes, because if you're on the good side, if you're on the winning side and everything, then it's, people usually talk about it, and usually there's some exaggerations and stuff. It happens almost every single time. But it's also kind of funny, like if you look into my family, you look into my grandmother's brother, who actually went and volunteered to the SS. I don't know a single thing about it. My grandparents spoke about it one time, and my father was also like, "No, we don't talk about it. We don't need to know. We don't need to know about it."
Yeah.
Just forget about it. So it's like one of the part where I want to know more, because I want to understand, like, was he did he do it because of his individual beliefs, or did he do it because of the general feeling that the Soviets had attacked Finland, which used to be ours for 700 years? Our grand enemy has always been the Russians. Now the Germans are invading. This is the way I can join it. Did he do it because of that? You want to understand the history of it, but it's a completely shut door. I can't get any information out of it.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And that's a shame too. Like, so being in my position and seeing these documents I get from like various historical sources and individual perspectives and everything, it's people get the impression that it's very political in some way or fashion, that it's got to be, some things have to be taboo and some are not. And I while I can appreciate that perspective, when you're actually, I mean, from my perspective, when I'm actually doing this history and everything, I'm thinking to myself, there could be absolutely nothing left that says this person existed other than this document right here. Like anything. And I thought to myself, I could be, one of these days I'm going to die. One of these days I'm not going to, all that's going to be left of me is maybe a tombstone and, whatever I had left over from that, and I will be lost to time.
Yeah.
And people don't really think like that. And it's something that's kind of just stuck with me. And the fact of the matter is that people, both good and bad, made their decisions for whatever reasons, and this is a record of that. And ultimately, they're people still, and to have this information and do nothing with it, or not to remember it for whatever reason, it's criminal. It's something that I don't believe it should be a thing. We have to remember history and the lessons it is, and be mature about the fact that it's still a perspective. I mean, a lot of the history that I'm going through, there's no one to tell me what was right or wrong. It's just literally their testimony, and this is all we know about them now. Yeah. So I don't know. I can talk about that for a while and get drunk and everything.
I completely understand you. So I think we're going to start wrapping it up. But I got some random stuff I just wanted to ask you. And then after that, I was thinking we're going to do the viewers' questions. So those of you people watching here, if you do have any questions, put them in the chat right now, and I will ask Chris after I'm done with asking my random questions.
Yeah.
First and foremost, these are kind of like, questions. We try to keep the answer semi-short and everything, so it doesn't take too long. And since I haven't asked you these questions before, you don't know what they're about. But the first question, the United States Marine Corps losing their tanks.
Do you have another 4 hours to spare?
Yeah, I figured it would be something like that. But what do you think about it? What do you feel about it?
well, this is not a G-rated podcast, or
Yeah.
rather a G-rated interview.
Yeah.
I think it's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
I think it's utterly retarded, and I think the Marine Corps is losing its identity, or it's definitely changing, not for the better, but for the worse.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing about the Marine Corps was its expeditionariness. We can go from everything from high-intensity mechanized warfare all the way to doing low-intensity disaster relief, and we can do everything in between. Not because we have the budget for it, but because it's hard and we're flexible. That's our whole thing, our flexibility to deal with global crises around the globe. And when you take away some of those facets, to include tanks, because it wasn't just tanks, it was tanks, I think 90% of the artillery, and a couple of squadrons of helicopters, and I think even one whole grunt battalion, it got all cut. You take away all these assets that make us as adaptable to any situation, then you also limit the scale or the global impact the Marine Corps has. We can't be called on now to deal with these things because now we don't have these facets. And
also one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that building those capabilities up take a long time.
Yeah, I mean, people experience is a resource that people don't think about. And when you have people who are experienced in running a tank battalion and then they have to go away, well, whenever that battalion comes back, you have to learn the lessons all over again. And that takes time. That just takes experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What's the next big thing for you individually?
Individually, it's getting an actual paying job, or getting back a paying job in a museum or an archive, and actually getting back to it. That's what I want to do. There's a couple of things that are on my radar in regards to the National Guard and school that I'm also trying to handle. For example, there is in the National Guard in particular, there is a rumor that they're bringing tanks to the Texas National Guard. So my ears are perked up for that.
Yeah.
But so far it's just been an administrative note. It's something that I've been thinking about, and I'm thinking about in terms of, do I want to re-enlist with that in mind or not? It's on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is going for my master's in history, which with the archives that I'm attached to would be an easy thing to do.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, well, maybe not an easy thing, but it would be easier now that I have these resources on hand. So that's what's up right now.
Third question.
Yeah.
When will you come to Sweden?
When the snows melt and you guys get rid of that well, I'll come back to Sweden when you guys realize that Denmark is where it's at, and you return back to the fold, and you just accept the fact that it's Greater Denmark. What can I say?
Oh, yeah, okay. So maybe in 600 years or something, yeah. Yeah. All right. My last random question is a War Thunder related question. So here we go a little bit into War Thunder. The M1A1 and M1A2 Abrams have both been added to the game and have been they've been there for like a year or so. And as you know, as a War Thunder player, you can better your crew in a tank.
Yeah.
Which will make them more efficient into just driving, repairing, and especially reloading.
Yeah.
Exactly. So both the M1A1 and the M1A2 max reload, if you have an aced crew, is 6 seconds. Is that realistic or not?
That is absolutely realistic. But there, and this is this gets into one of those game-isms, because it's a consistent 6 seconds, right?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, when you're in the tank and you're loading the rounds, you're contending with the fact that the tank is also moving. So it's kind of like I think sailors call it your sea legs. I'll call it like your tank legs.
Yeah.
The tank is moving. You're having to you're getting jostled around while you're opening the door, pulling out the round, ramming it in, taking off the safety, saying it's up, making sure the door's closed. Up. It's not impossible. It's just a video game can only go so far in simulating that.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's many of other factors to consider because 6 seconds is definitely it's definitely viable with something like a Sable round, which is it's not as cumbersome as say an MPAT or the older Heat rounds, or it's not as off balance as say a canister round, which is another thing that War Thunder doesn't touch with. It doesn't really mess with the other rounds that the Abrams tank can take, or much less the other rounds the other tanks can take in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, just little details like that, they change things. And yeah, 6 seconds is definitely it's definitely a thing that can happen. Is it realistically a thing that happens a lot? I mean, no, not really, but yeah, it can happen if everything is perfectly happening. But you know, I digress. I could go on forever about that.
All right. Yeah, well, that's a solid answer. Okay, and then now we're moving on to the viewers' question. We got a bunch here.
All right.
First one here is a guy who is saying that he is going to enlist in the Swedish army soon. He wants to be a tanker, and that is his dream to be. So his question to you is there things he should think about and prepare, in your opinion, for specifically preparing to become a tanker, pretty much?
Well, there are some universal. I would say there are some universal traits among tankers that you should have, and it's a balancing act, as with many things in life. Take care of yourself, but make sure you're also giving it your best. For a tanker, I mean, I don't know how the Swedish military does their system, but I imagine there's still going to be a lot of lifting of heavy things and putting them down.
Yeah.
So, if there's something I would recommend to him as a tanker, it would be to be physically fit. But not just being a great runner, because frankly there was not a whole lot of running as a tanker, but you're going to be lifting a lot of heavy things and putting them down. So as someone who goes to the gym and works out regularly, I highly recommend doing your squats, doing your deadlifts, and getting your body just overall strong, and getting on those core, well, not core, but those strength oriented workouts, because this is just military life in general. There's things you need to do to be physically fit in the military, but then there's the practical things you got to do as actually doing your job.
Yeah.
So, you know, I never in my time as a tanker did I have to run 3 miles in under 21 minutes, but the Marine Corps said I had to do that. So I did train to that, but the reality was I was lifting. I was lifting road wheels from the ground up onto the tank itself, and that is a different kind of strength set. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind. Keep yourself involved in the community, and stay hungry. Be knowledgeable, but also seek knowledge. Always remember your humility. That's really more life in general, but that ties into your career as a whole.
Yeah.
Be humble, be communicative, and be resilient. I guess that's the other one.
All right.
I hope that helps.
Yeah.
Good luck to you. Semper Fi.
There we go. Next question here is. Wait, I have to read it one time first. Does Chris Museum exchange artifacts and exposies with other countries' museum?
Yes, at least the ones that I've been involved with. The Army Medical Museum in particular, the Artifacts Department or the Collections Department, has partnerships around the globe. In particular, I at one time had to aid our collections officer she was in communication with, I believe it was a Danish museum or it was a Belgian one, and they wanted to know what what was it? It was like the army dress uniform for a nurse pre World War One, and we had that. So we put it on a model stand. We tested it out, or we gave it a kind of a profile, a fitting, and we took pictures of it, side profile, little details. We gave them a whole slew of pictures that like really exemplified the uniform in all its aspects, all its characteristics, and we shipped that information to them, the pictures, the descriptions, the sizes, and everything. So most definitely, and museums communicate with each other, but that's also an individual kind of thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised it would not occur if no one talked about it. Someone just had a question and they decided to reach out, and then therefore communication was had and a relationship. So
yeah. Next questions is what do you guys, both me and you, think about the increase of private military contractors in war zones?
I mean that's a long question.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think it's honestly, part of me wants to say it's more of the same thing, because throughout history there has been some kind of and it's probably not the it's not the politically correct term, but there has always been a mercenary contingent in every kind of conflict zone, or a militia kind of contingent. In my mind, it's more of the same, and it's something that's been around since the ancient times, from the Greeks on to the Romans, and the various mercenary free companies of Italy. I think it's something that's always going to be a present thing, and some nations, some states, utilize private military contractors in different aspects than others. For example, I'm thinking about Russia, for example. They have their private military contractors working in a different capacity than, say, the American ones, or even I'm so misinformed on this. I really don't know the whole world of it. But
a couple of Swedish companies, private military companies, usually what they do is VIP protection, and they kind of do that for the government. So the government, they have, of course, groups from the security police and the military that can do those jobs, but there's only that many of them. So it's nice to have a different a company just be like, okay, we're hiring these guys.
Yeah.
They get to do it. Our guys get to sit this one out, and then they do the next one. So it's just nice to have that. And the thing is, as long as it's, in my opinion, as long as it's controlled, and those companies abide by the set rules by the government that hires them, which needs to be on the same level as the military units they have over there, then it's fine. And if they break those rules, then they need to be punished accordingly, just like with everyone else.
Yeah, and that you bring up an interesting point, because I remember while I was at the Warrior Transition Battalion, when they would have their job fairs, there was one PMC company. All they did was maintenance. They had a contract with the Saudi government, and all they did was do maintenance on their fleet of vehicles, everything from American tanks to that of trucks and APCs and the sort.
Yeah.
They were technically a private military contractor, but they never carried arms or anything like that. They were maintenance guys because they had the expertise.
This is the thing also, talking about history, you're talking about the logistics and everything. You could arguably make the case that one of the main reasons why the Allies won the war was because they had better logistics. People never want to talk about that. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing in the private military contractor world. You can meet someone who's like, what do you do? I'm a contractor. And everyone like, oh shit, he's kicking down doors. He used to be former special forces guy. Always these exciting things. They never think about the mechanics and the cooks and the people who plan the logistics and all these things. Those are equally as important jobs, but they're not as cool because I don't know if it's Hollywood or whatever it is.
it's always a collection of things, man. But and that's the thing. When I was talking about history and learning about perspectives and actually studying this stuff, if you're talking about history, I think one of the first victims that gets missed in history when people talk about any topic is context and perspective.
Yeah.
People, that stuff gets lost in the sauce, and these popular narratives get espoused because they sound really good, but actually digging into them is really the interesting part. And you realize that a lot of things are, well, not even a lot of things are they're more interesting when you realize that some are false and some are true, and there's degrees of that. So it's, you know, going back on the logistics thing, you know, the United States had whatever war the United States was having to fight, it was going to be fighting over there across 2 different oceans and onto different battlefields that required their own logistical thing. And it's a different logistical situation from that of, say, Germany in 1941.
Yeah.
It's a different logistical situation for the British in 1941. It's there's different perspectives, and people had different lessons from the war. And I'm going to stop right there because I'm just going to go into that spider hole forever and not come out.
It's very interesting. Like I listened to a Swedish podcast that a friend of mine that actually served with in the military is part of, and it's called like, if you translate, it's like the war podcast. You could pretty much say, and they made an entire podcast about Germany, especially during like World War I and World War II, saying that they're excellent at fighting. They're shitty at war. That's kind of the summarization. Like, they're very good at causing casualties, the mission tactics, all of these other things, but they're terrible when it comes to the diplomacy, the logistics, and a lot of those different things that they have not really. They've been like, machine guns, that's what we need. Okay, but what about the other things? The machine guns. Yeah, but machine guns, and then
There's so many little, like, great little nuances to talk about that.
It's another topic. You might be getting a little bit
it's a rabbit hole.
Another question here: Do you play either World of Tanks or War Thunder?
I played War Thunder because I appreciated the it was more. So World of Tanks and War Thunder are still both very arcadey games, but War Thunder had a little bit more simulation to it than World of Tanks. Oh yeah, and I appreciated that much more. And when I did play a whole lot more, that was one of the reasons. I enjoyed what did I start with? I started with the American line, and I started really enjoying the German line and the British, and then the Russian line, but that was over the course of like 3.5 years or so.
Yeah, but it's funny that you say that, because I regularly try to say this to people, that War Thunder is not a realistic game. And a lot of people is like, there's a lot of it is, almost all of it is realistic. And you're like, I don't even know where to start describing this. But yet again, that's a big big subject. Yeah.
There's a whole, and what gets me about War Thunder is that it has such a niche like focus on this one thing, and it has a monopoly on that. Because in my mind, World of Tanks can't compete with it because it's also an arcade tank game, but it's more arcade than tank or simulation. It's more arcade than simulation than War Thunder is. War Thunder is a little bit more simulation than it is arcadey, but it's still very arcadey, extremely arcadey. And the thing is, I talked about it earlier. People have this popular sense, and their experiences influences that popular image. Mm-hmm. And when people their only experience with say tanks is War Thunder, therefore they think, oh, so this is what it must be like, which is not the case in the slightest. I mean, it's an entertaining game, and I'll leave it at that. But when you want to talk about like something that employs actual hard-earned tanking experience and everything like that, video games, they don't they can try, but they don't give any kind of like real life examples.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. What is Chris' favorite World War II tank?
Oh, I'll make it a short list. And it'll be a top three things because I'm always like jumping between these three.
Okay.
So it's the Sherman. It's not technically a tank. I know the Stug. I love the Stug.
Oh yeah.
And it's also the Panzer III, in its various iterations.
Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah. Nice and short answer. Yeah. Jumping on to the next one. Give me a second here. Allows to buy that the gun is long and functional. In Germany, it is allowed to buy a tank under the conditions that the gun is no longer functional and that the owner was a member of the tank corps. Is this allowed in the USA and in Sweden? You can go first.
I have no idea actually about. I mean, I know in Texas our gun laws are extremely. There's really very few restrictions in regards to owning firearms, much less tanks. But I'm not very familiar with how they treat old war machines and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that there is a tank park in Texas. I want to say it's near Waco. It's called I think it's called Drive Tanks USA or something like that.
I've heard about it. Yeah, and, I've heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And they have insane prices, insane for even me. But you get to go and drive tanks and work them and everything like that. And but I have no idea what the tank laws are in the U.S. I know that like especially for, I mean, like museums and such, and there's private collections and whatnot, and they exist out here. I'm not very familiar with them at all.
Mm-hmm. As for Sweden, yes, you can own it. I actually saw on one of the most common pages for people selling secondhand stuff. People put up like especially Russian armored vehicles. I can't remember what the damn thing is called. It's like the MGLB or something. It's like a very low silhouetted Russian troop transport. It has like steering sticks and everything. It like
MTLB.
MTLB. Yes, MTLB. Yeah. That's the one. And you could buy it for that was like 3,000 euros.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, so like you can go buy that one, absolutely. But there are limitations as to which roads you can drive on and what you can do and stuff like that. But yes, you can buy it here, and you do not have to have been part of the military.
That's awesome.
Yeah. What is this? Did Chris ever get to warm up the crosswind sensor?
No, I did not. But I was convinced to get exhaust samples at one point, but I caught on real quick, and I just played the fucking game because everyone plays that fucking game. No, but there's the crosswind sensor. You gotta get a hammer and look for the weak spots in the armor in the tank. Just go tinking along that. One big one was getting the what was it called? When you're testing the ballistic computer, the mechanics have a certain device that they just hook it on and they make sure all the systems are fine. But if it comes back, what is it supposed to say? Get the ID 10 key from the shop, and if you don't think about it, you just listen to the mechanic. He tells you to go get the ID 10 key, and you're supposed to go to the mechanic shop and pick it up. Well, if you how did it go? It's supposed to be saying, hey, this is an ID 10. It's supposed to be like idiots. you're gonna go get the you're basically making going on an idiot run, and there's nothing. They're just fucking with you at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not exactly the same, but it's kind of like the same thing that we did with one of the basic training companies that I was in. They were gonna be home guard infantry, and we had these practice grenades where they have like a fuse in them and everything, so they get to practice all the how to hold the grenade and do everything properly until we move on and throw the real thing. But then as you throw that dummy grenade, you have to go up there and afterwards and go collect it, the body of the grenade itself. And we used to do that after they thrown their first real grenade. Everyone was scared shitless, right? And as an instructor, you're also kind of like on edge, because these are, pretty much civilian people. Here's an explosive, toss it. But afterwards, we always used to do this thing. Okay, go get the grenade now. And then people jumped out and like running around. And you're like, oh, okay, he's not gonna get far in life, that one.
Oh my God, that's
yeah. Another question here. What is the most comfortable spot to sleep on in the Abrams?
Hands down, no questions asked, no other, the driver's seat.
Driver, yeah.
I mean, just look, you can Google it, look up the driver's seat, and look at how they sit in their spot. When the tank is buttoned up and they're ready to drive, you are laying down on a recliner. It is a wonderful seat, and it's lots. You can fall asleep there very easily, especially with like the tank just like humming to you very, very soothingly. There's like you feel a slight vibration in the controls, and if your TC has no orders for you, you're just there and just waiting. It's very, very relaxing, in my mind anyway.
Showing the picture right now, actually, yeah, that looks dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. What do we got? Where are you? If Chris could go back in time, would you change anything you did in terms of your career or service? For example, going to the Navy instead of, or going to the Army.
If I could go back, I would have changed my whole infantry mindset and joined a cavalry unit. Now, my understanding of how the Army organizes their units is it's very tedious, or not tedious. It's very limited, honestly. It's been growing ever since. But if I had the mindset to go join as a cavalry scout instead, I would be more involved in the mechanized assets of the military or the Army, and that's really what I want to get back into, because tanks being tanks, it's armor, but it's also deals with everything from IFVs to wheeled vehicles and everything. And once you're in that field, you understand the rules better. In a tank or otherwise, it's the same rules apply. You just got to know your machine, and it'll be a different one. So
I can relate to that. It's actually the same thing here. Like, having come from the Marines, you're kind of like a couple of times per year you do a larger exercise where it's like, you have like one battalion and you're fighting some other battalion and you have attached units and everything. So it's usually a couple of thousand people. But then you go to, when I went to the Army here, our 7th Army Regiment, it's like a normal exercise is just massive when it comes to, in size. You have everything. You have artillery, you have tanks, you have, the mechanized, then you have, different type of ranger units, scouting units. You have all of these things, and people come from like all over doing these exercise, and it's just, everything's just massive. You see all the infantry fighting vehicles passing you. It's like, oh, this is just a small exercise, but we have 150 CV90s. Okay, and we have like 40 STRV 122s, and it's like, you just see everything. You're like, oh, shit, is this how big is this? No, it's just the spring exercise that we have here every year. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. It's
mind-boggling how much money Big Army has.
Oh yeah, it's always the same. It's the same here. Marines is kind of like, we had a I remember when I was in TAC P in the Marines, Tactical Air Control Party. We had like a laser marker that was from a Cobra, like a helicopter Cobra, from the Vietnam era.
Yeah.
Oh my God. They were like, it works, and it's like, yes, but it weighs like 20 kilos. But it's like, oh, you're a fit guy, aren't you? I was like,
That reminds me, I sent you a picture of my time at 29 Palms when we were doing a training rotation there.
Yeah.
Or I sent you a couple of them. You bring up cobras, and one of our training scenarios was kind of like hip pocket. We just like did it at the time because the helicopter attack squadron, well, one of them came with us to go and do their annual training with us, and when we weren't doing any of the big scale training scenarios, we actually went to one part of 29 Palms that was absolutely barren, and we were playing hunter seeker games with each other. So the whole game was basically the cobras have to find us and kill us, and we had to just get our gun on it and laze the gunships, and it was literally just cat and mouse. We would go into like the bush line, try and turn off our tanks, try and get the heat down as much as we could, mask our position as best we could, and then we would just like with binoculars be looking out for these gunships. And then we'd see them. They're like dancing between the mountains and the hills over there, just like weaving through these areas, trying to like go up, peek, and look around, come back down, come another spot, and it was just back and forth. And our platoon went up against like two cobras, and they managed to kill two of our tanks, and we managed to laze one of them, and their flare system was popping up and everything before we had to like cancel or like end the whole training scenario.
Yeah.
Oh man, and it was so much fun too because it was just like we're just tense about it and just like eyes out, eyes out, eyes out.
And usually
So-
that's actually when you draw the most the most experience, is when you actually have a thinking enemy fighting against you,
Yeah.
and you get that feeling like, it's not just moving up on a range, shooting it against a static target and all these things. It's kind of like, oh shit, now you start realizing what you need to do in real life and what changes needs to be made, and and
absolutely.
how your communication works and everything.
Absolutely. We would often so in second tanks they had an attached they were called what do they call them, marine scouts, and they essentially act as they're supposed to be the on foot patrol kind of like eyes of the battalion. And when we couldn't get training with other units to go against us as Op 4 or vice versa, we would train with those guys as our Op 4. And those guys they knew how to try and sneak around our tanks and our areas of responsibility, but other times we'd catch them on tanks and we catch them on foot and just like lay them out. But I remember one time I was on my platoon leader's tank. I was his loader, and one of our I think it was our 2 tank, he got mired in a mud in a forested area with one road in there, and his tank managed to get stuck in the mud in that. So we were going to go and pull him out. So in the middle of nowhere, with the trees all around us, no security set up, I'm the one, as the loader, had to get out and go hook up the tank to their tank so we can pull them out.
Yeah.
Well, lo and behold, here I am. I'm lugging all the heavy shit, hooking up the tank and everything like that, and suddenly I see the silhouette of a fire team of the scouts just like coming up to the side of the tank. And he notionally shot me. They threw the grenades on top of the tank. My platoon leader wasn't scanning his sector either, so both our tanks got killed because no one set up security, and he got a verbal lashing from his leadership about that. And it was just one of those things like. And then that night we reset and we were fighting them again. And they didn't attack our sector, but once they called Index and they ended the exercise, they were rolling through a really muddied sector of our AO, and they just got mired in the mud in their Humvee. So us and our tank, we went over to them, hooked them up, and then pulled them out of the mud. And I was really upset because they promised our crew a handle of Jack for getting them out because they never made do with that promise. So
you still okay? Yeah, there you go. But it's funny when you say that because I have stories just similar to that. Like when I was the squad leader in the Marines, so we were fighting against like a Marine mechanized. There's like a 6-wheeled vehicle with like a 20 mil on the rooftop, and we kind of got them into a thick forest, and we're kind of like just waiting for them to kind of get confused. You know, the one platoon gets messed up. They try to bring up the vehicles to support and everything, and then my squad was just there like literally sitting on a small rock over a road, and as soon as they drove below us, we just were dropping hand grenades, running up to the vehicle, climbing up, shooting the machine gun into the vehicle, tossing a grenade in there, and then getting out. And then there was this one of these safety officers that was just running around and be like, who the fuck is the people climbing up on the tank? Because you're not supposed to do that. You can't do that according to military regulations because of safety protocol. But it was still like, you were doing it, and then afterwards, like, our platoon commander, like, do you think you would actually do that? Would you do that in real life? And it's like, why not? There's like, no, you wouldn't. You would never fight tanks. You would never fight any type of armored vehicles. I was like, fuck that. We're fighting. I have to do something. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. I totally get that sentiment. We got a couple Marines in my guard unit right now, and one of my biggest influences and one of my best teachers, I guess you could say, was he was a weapons platoon Marine in a grunt unit, and I think he was mortars. But anyway, he's a man who is all about the fight, and he had like a 10-year break in service between his Marine Corps time and the National Guard. But my God, he is an absolute sage when it comes to like being engaged and fighting, and in a military context. I love that man to death.
Another question here is, who is responsible? And this might be, I know the guy who's asking this, he's Swedish, and there is a backstory to this. Who is responsible for the coffee in the Abrams?
Who is responsible? All right. From the Marine Corps perspective, the driver drives, the gunner guns, and he supervises maintenance. The loader is the head maintenance chief of the tank, but he's also the bartender. So
it's the same as here. You usually say that the loader here, he's also the chef. Like, one of the things that he does, the gunner has his task, the tank commander has his task, the driver has his task when you stop, and then the loader, he usually just helps them or start preparing the food.
Basically, yeah. The loader, we say that the gunner, or rather, the TC it's his tank, but everyone knows the guy who does the work is the loader here. So
there you go.
That's just me like ribbing on the other guys, but yeah, the loader, he is the bartender, he's the radio man, he's the second set of eyes for the tank commander. He's the utility guy in my mind, and doctrinally speaking, it depends on the SOPs of the battalion. But we had a really good relationship where everyone knew their part and everyone trained in each other's position. I really liked being a loader. I'm not gonna lie. In my mind, it was. I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in my tank, and I owned my tank, and I was very proud of my tanks.
Yeah, but I mean, I can relate to that too, because the vehicle that I was attached on when I was in the army, they were kind of like, do you want to become a gunner? Do you want to become the driver, or do you want to actually go to like a tank commander, or like not tank but armored vehicle commander? And I was already manning the radios in the back of it, and like communicating our platoons, what assets we have, where we were, managing the artillery from inside the vehicle just by listening to what the infantry tells me and everything. And I was like, I'm set over here. This is my space back here. I have I think they have 9 seats back there, and I was completely alone over there. I was laying down, being comfortable, managing the radios, doing all these things, drawing on these charts and everything. That was like my space. I was like, I don't want to go anywhere. If I want to, I just hatch up and stand inside one of the hatches back there as a rifleman, and it's like, that's it. I'm all squared away.
Yeah. I'll go ahead.
You go ahead, because it's the next question.
The driver, him and I were the maintenance guys for the tank. We were the muscle. The gunner and the TC, they had to have their relationship because ultimately they're the ones who are literally fighting and communicating when it comes to like the guns and seeing things. So they have to have their relationship. The driver and the loader have their relationship. They keep things running while the gunner and the TC keep things working, if that makes any sense. So, but when it came to the relationships on the tank, me being the bartender, the TC and the gunner had to bring the snacks. So this is where all the pogey bait comes. Someone brings a cooler or someone has a little bag where all our snacks go, and they're usually the ones who buy it for the tank crew. So everyone just contributes in their way to making it like home for everyone. So, yeah.
Yeah. And now the last two questions. What
All right.
the first one? What is your favorite historic era?
Oh God, I kind of and that's really hard to say. I'm a big fan of studying the Romans and the Roman legions. My favorite era in that regard is the late Imperial era. I just think it's a really dynamic and a really influential time. The Western Romans in particular. But at the same time, I get itches about studying World War One. I right now I'm also really interested in studying the Pacific and the war in Burma in World War II. I just kind of jump around places, but what I mainstay come back to is studying the Roman system of military and governance and the people involved and all that stuff.
So ahead of their time. I was actually hearing this on my friend's the war podcast. Apparently now in Syria they have found a village that was under Roman control that did nothing for several hundred years than to produce olive oil. It was a whole town of several thousand people who were exporting this under Roman control. And that was more than 2,000 years ago.
Gosh, that is incredible.
Yeah.
Part of me, I really like looking into the details of like typical legionary life. You know, like I'm pretty sure you can look all this stuff up through various sources online. But just the aspect of like, to just enter the Roman army as a legionary, let alone the citizenship. The tests involved oh gosh, I apologize to all you all who deal in metric, but it's something like a 20-mile ruck march over the course of 5 hours, and that's their standard with a 45-pound pack just filled with rocks, and they have to make that standard to be considered for the Legion, and it's an everyday thing. The Roman army was an army on foot, on the move. And it's a day in, day out. You're building things. You're literally living off the land. It's fascinating to me. That's all.
I completely agree with that because yet again during this podcast, the guys there, they said one thing that was so like I never thought about it. You kind of seen it in the movies to some extent, but one thing that they really highlighted that I didn't think of was like it's literally. We are the civilization. Everything behind us has been civilized. We're standing here in some field in France or in Germany. We literally have no idea what's going to come out of the other side. There's literally forest from here to Siberia. We don't know what we're facing. Remain disciplined and let's bring civilization. Yeah.
It brings a whole new meaning to the term Firewatch. Like you and I understand what Firewatch means, what Radio Watch means.
Yeah.
But to literally in that time, a time where once it got dark, things got dangerous, when you had to be on your toes, when there could be some motherfucker with a knife just waiting to slit your throat so he can take y'all's horses or your bread or something like that. You had to be on your toes at all times because there's anything and everything out there. To throw in the fact that like popular belief, the mysticisms of like the Germanic peoples and the Celts and and they're shapeshifters and whatnot. These popular ideas that like must have been the conversation of like the legionaries at the time. it's just really fascinating to me.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I completely agree. Last question, at least for this podcasty thing. Is there really animosity between different branches in the U.S. military, or is it exaggerated? Is it such a thing also in Sweden, or not, like in other countries? You go ahead.
You know, it's a thing that exists, but it's also is subject to perspectives. For example, in World War II, I believe it was on the retaking of Saipan. I think it was Saipan. Yeah. Anyway, Army and Marine units were working together, but there was also cases where Army units were shooting at Marines, not knowing who they were. At the same time, there's plenty of cases of friendly fire up until recently, even Afghanistan and whatnot. Oh, yeah. And that fuels this animosity between units. But there's also that's also like one aspect of it. The other aspect is a whole lot of people who don't see combat. They just see how organizations are run, and they put in their biases, which is their experience, into that and say, this unit does this a certain way. I don't like that. They're trash. It's a lot of little
I'm guilty of that.
A lot of little facets of that.
I'm guilty of that. Yeah.
Yeah. We have here in the Texas National Guard. I'm part of an infantry unit, and one of our sister battalions is the Airborne Battalion. It's they're the hotshot kids that they're absolutely, they got the budget to train, they got all the cool Gucci gear, and they're like on top of that shit. They don't deploy. They have no combat experience. They have no leadership that has any experience outside of their annual drills. They're kind of trash, but they get all the budget. So there's animosity there, and that's just inter-battalion level, not even, so like these things all exist and it's all a matter of scale. Like, I mean, shit, like in my unit itself, in my platoon, we're second platoon. We have a lot of senior guys who have a lot of experience, but our first platoon guys, they're all the new guys, and they're just trash because they're just new guys who don't understand. Yeah. So like that exists, it's. Yeah, and a lot of it is just like ribbing each other up. A lot of it is, it's relationships. It's how people work with each other. So all these things you just got to keep in perspective. So sorry, I kind of just kept talking.
No, it's all right. But it's kind of the same thing here. I mean, a lot of people within the Swedish military, who, especially the people who don't just join for a short period of time and then get out, but people who are kind of into it for their careers. A lot of them hate the Marines here. We call it the amphibious corps. And they're absolutely not like, because the amphibious corps do everything their own way. We wear the same uniform here, like everyone does, but the Marines have the approval to fold their sleeves with the white side out, and it's just that thing. It's enough to get people going. The Marines hold on to the Royal Marine Commando, the British commando units. Their tradition of intentionally landing and fighting with the green beret on, in order to, as a psychological weapon on the enemy, being like, oh fuck, we're fighting the commandos, this is over and done with. We do that. A lot of like army units, they're like, are you retarded? Why are you not wearing your helmet? And it's like, this thing can take more. There's more salt into this thing. Like, I don't know if I ever shown you my beret. I wore it almost like every day for at least 6-7 years. It's like holes in it all over, but I've done almost everything. Awesome. I've done almost everything with it. It's been on me for so many different occasions, and I had it in my pocket for everything I've done in the military, no matter where I went.
I don't know if you could see it up there, but I got my boonie that I take every time I go hiking, or my entire time in the Marine Corps, I had that thing on. It's my favorite thing to wear. Yeah. And I get that. I get that in a way. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of animosity cross branches too. Like, we get new Marines in this unit, and we get it's because we're Marines, and we are we are the best, and therefore, oh, so I'm not a Marine. Me being an Army infantry and all my experiences, you think you're better than us and all that stuff. It's that kind of attitude too. And when we get Marines coming in who go from the Marine Corps to the Army because of for whatever reason, they're usually like shat upon, and like either it's friendly jabbing or it's real life. Some people really have grudges on them, and they just fuck up their career because they don't like the Marines for whatever reason. And it's a terrible thing, but it's a thing that really does happen, and I've experienced it and I've seen it myself. So people are petty. If there's one thing you people out there need to keep in mind, there's a lot of petty people out there.
Mm-hmm. I'm getting a comment here also from a friend of mine who visited me last year. He's from Italy. I think he saw the Beret, but then I also had like a wind jacket, but it's kind of for cold weather, but you can also turn it inside out, and then it's desert colored, so you can wear it on wherever you go. And we had a thing for that jacket that we got issued, and our field cap, like a normal cap that we wear with the military color camouflage scheme on it, to not wash them. And the more filthy they got, the more experienced you were. So like you literally had people like with 12 years in, it didn't even look like a jacket anymore. It looked like it's complete track. Then he usually he could go to supply and they're like, what the here's a new one. They don't even write it up. So he had they had a nice one so that you could wear it if there's like you're supposed to wear it during some type of official thing. But I also had that one, and I got to keep it because I burnt it on a M240, like a machine gun. So it has like holes in it. So I got to keep I had to keep the jacket. So I got it here. So I show him here, and I think it was my friend Orla here who said it. But it's like, what the fuck happened to this? It's like, oh no, it's just it's a military thing. Like the more dirty you are, the more salt you put in, the more
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Our 6-point cover, you had to buy 2 6-point covers for every, or rather, you had to buy 2 sets of uniforms in the Marine Corps. One for the inspections, and the ones that you wore. And the ones that you wore, you really wore them. You really wore them out. And like you said, it's just it's a level of salt. It's a level of experience that you have it's like a badge of honor. Yeah. And
exactly.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Well, that is going to conclude this here little interview podcasty thing. 3 hours and 10 minutes.
Gosh, was that long?
Gosh. Yeah. I mean, time flies when you have fun. God, I kind of lost it there for a second, but we'll have to talk soon again. I think we hopefully we might have started something new here on the channel that people appreciate, and then usually a lot of people come in with those who didn't have time to watch it live. They come in with questions afterwards, and if we get a bunch of those, then maybe you want to come on again and answer those questions.
I'm all fine and dandy for that. We can set up a new one. I'm open to any questions that people have. I'd be happy to try and answer as best as I can from my perspective and all that stuff. But this was a great experience. I'm really happy to get involved with you all.
Yeah. But then I'm going to say thank you so much for participating, and I will talk to you again shortly.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Semper Gumby, guys.
Semper Gumby. There we go. Yeah. Thank you.
Laters.
All right, people. Wow. Yeah. Time flies when you have fun. And boy, did I have fun. That was, I actually didn't, truth be told here, I didn't think that it would go this well. Chris, of course, is a very, very, very nice man, very highly educated and experienced, which makes it easier for me to interview him. I'm also going to upload this on YouTube, and feel free to share the information about this here new little podcast so we can get it into a very nice place, hopefully. So with that, I'm going to say thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you again shortly. Thank you.